Up here. Okay, there we go. That's better. So let me start all over. Welcome to our city council meeting this evening, March 26th of 2024, our first meeting, council meeting held in our new public safety building. We appreciate you joining us this evening. We will begin our meeting tonight by asking Councilmember Dalpas to either lead us in an invocation, give us a thought at his selection, and then we'll have a pledge of allegiance led by Councilmember Dalpas.
I would like to offer a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this evening and grateful for the opportunity to collectively be together as a council and as a community here. We're grateful for all of the blessings that we see in our lives and in our community, and we're grateful to be a part of this city. We ask for a special blessing upon anyone in the city that is going through any struggles or any afflictions, that they will be taken care of and that they can be in an improved state. We're so grateful for all that we have and ask a blessing that we'll be able to have good civil dialogue in this meeting tonight. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpas. Tonight, we're honored to have with us our Youth City Council. I understand they just returned from Utah State University a little while ago for a leadership conference, and they're here with us tonight to report. Councilmember Watson is our liaison with Youth Council, so I'm going to turn the time to her.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm really excited about these youth. We have a great group of youth, and rather than me boring you, I'm going to let them do the talking and turn the time over to them. Hi, I'm Miley Harkness, and we just recently came back from a conference, like I just said, or she just said, sorry. It was a really great experience for all of us. I think we really enjoyed it a lot. It was a great opportunity to meet all the different youth councils in the state and just to learn more about communication and about leadership. The theme of the conference was future and focus. So we attended lots of classes, and we listened to speakers, and we really just learned about the things we can do to improve our future. Things such as habit building, like building good habits now to improve our future, and setting goals, and learning about our core values and what each of us can add to our future and to our community. We went to classes on Friday, we had a banquet, and we went to a dance, and we just really learned about talking with other people and getting out of our comfort zone. It was just a really fun experience overall. On Saturday, all the different councils talked about what they took away from the conference. We discussed this as a council, and we're all going to share today what we all took from it. Something that I heard from one of the speakers that I really liked was you bring the weather. Whenever you walk into a room, you get to decide what weather you're going to be. Are you going to bring that storm, or are you going to be that light, that sunshine in someone else's life? You get to make that decision whenever you walk into a room. That's something that I heard that I really liked and would like to apply to my life. So now we're going to hear from everybody else and the things that they took away from the conference.
Hi, my name is Katie Putnam, and something I learned from the conference is how to talk and communicate better. I am not the greatest at talking to others, but I learned how to communicate and network much better. One quote that we all really liked, and I really liked personally, was to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I personally really like that because I thought it was an important life lesson to learn, that it's like you have to learn to not be okay being not comfortable, and learning to communicate and all these things better will be really beneficial in my life, I think, for many future things.
My name is Haley Squire, and one of the breakout sessions that I liked was where we learned about interview skills and building resumes. And today I had an interview that I was able to use those skills that I learned at the conference to better my interview. And one of the skills was like asking questions at the end of the interview to show that you're dedicated to that job and you want to know more about it.
I'm Lydia Potiker, and I learned about the core values and how they are super important. So we need to make good core values. If we don't pick good ones, that they can lead us in the wrong direction for our future and what it will look like. Core values can even help us with our goal and standards, just like how we learned about our goals and how it kind of ties into those core values.
Hi, my name is Peter Myers, and I went to a class on making habits. It's called on a book called Atomic Habits, and I learned that making small improvements every day can make a huge difference, and also to use my small habits to remind me to do my bigger goals, which is called goal stacking. This is valuable to me in my school studies and for my higher education goals, and ultimately what career path I choose. Good leaders set and attain goals.
So one of the things that I like, or one of my takeaways from the conference, is I really liked how we got to learn about resumes, and that that will help me with applying for a job or anything. And another thing that I learned that really stood out to me was they said it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you.
So one of the classes on Friday was called Amble Arguing, and it was like there are two groups that had an argument, but they didn't aggressively have that argument, and I just thought that was really good because it teaches you how to not have a really intense argument and just be calm about it and disagree politely, and yeah, just be nice about arguments. And yeah.
One of the classes that I went to was about resumes, and I learned how to make a resume, and I also learned what employers look for when they're hiring new employees.
I'm Kale, and I would just like to thank all of you guys, because we wouldn't have been able to go to this wonderful event without all of you. And I'm grateful for all your support and everything. And one thing that I took away is that we were able to make good connections with other cities, like we could get together over this event and just plan and hang out and just learn all these things together and go through this process to find things that can impact us on being better leaders, just like you guys. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You did a great job summarizing that really fantastic conference that we went to. And thanks also to Shelly Myers, who's the other advisor who supported. And also we have a brand new member, Peyton, who didn't speak because she wasn't able to go to the conference, but we're going to get her a jacket and get her on the team right away. So it was really great
I
opportunity.
think you're missing a couple too.
Oh, yes.
Don't we have about 16?
There were several who couldn't make it tonight. A couple of them had to work and couldn't get out of work. So there's a good group of, I think we do have 16 total youth.
So, and
Always
thanks to the advisors too. I know that takes a lot of work and takes a lot out of their schedule. And I had the chance to help interview the leadership group, and I was super impressed with you guys. These are our future leaders, and just grateful they had this opportunity. Before I forget too, Council Member Pulver is online with us tonight. So we do have a full council. He's with us, and I failed to mention that he's out of town, but has joined us via Zoom. We'll move forward then with our agenda. And Kale, I didn't hear any report on the dance or anything, and meeting of any other people up there, but I'm sure it was good. Good. That's part of it.
We also have already planned several events, one event, I guess, with several other councils that we met there that we can collaborate and join forces.
That's part of the experience, being able to learn and meet new people. So thank you. We'll move on then with our consent agenda. Council, you've had a chance to look at the agenda packet. Are there any conflicts of interest you feel need to be disclosed this evening based upon our agenda tonight? Is Councilmember Pulver there? Is he with us? He's okay, John? All right. I don't see any conflicts that would need to be disclosed. Item number 3 tonight is an action to approve the February 27th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. I think everyone's had a chance to look at those. Ryan does a great job and sends those out in advance. Just for the public to know, she sends those out and asks for any corrections to be made prior to the meeting. But if anyone has had a chance to read those and has any comments, they're welcome to make those. If not, council, I would look for a motion then to approve the February 27th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes.
Mayor, I'll approve that we go ahead and approve the minutes from February 27th, the minutes that Ryan has proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson, for that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dalpez. Is there any further discussion? Excuse me, on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 27th, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 4, which is the mayor appointing 2 new members of our audit committee. For those of you who aren't aware, we do have an audit committee that's comprised of council members and citizens. They review the financial statements of the city on a quarterly basis and give oversight when we meet with our independent auditors. With the departure of Councilmember Ekstrom and Councilmember Swanson, we need to reappoint a couple of council members. So I have spoken with Councilmember Barker and Councilmember Severing and asked them to replace and serve on the audit committee. Council, do you have any questions? No battle over who wants to sit on the audit committee? All right, then I would look for a motion from a member of the council to approve the 2 additional members of the audit committee. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve our 2 new members of the audit committee members, the audit committee being Blake Severing and Ryan Barker.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Councilmember Dalpez, is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 5. We'll hear from Dylan Hill, our rock star inspector, and he's going to ask us to approve a couple of things. Dylan?
Good evening. Thanks for letting me come to the city council tonight. The building is very nice. And it was awesome to hear about your council or your summit up there. So first, we have Rock Point Estates. It's a 3-lot subdivision or 4-lot subdivision just below Frog Rock. Sewer, water, approximately 300 feet of road, and sidewalks were part of the approved improvements. There was no storm drains or streetlights up here. And I've completed the conditional inspection on the improvements, and they're all up to the city codes and standards.
So a recommendation to approve?
Correct.
All right, we have a recommendation to approve the conditional acceptance of Rock Point Estates as explained by Dylan. Any questions for Dylan? All right, then I would look for a motion to give conditional acceptance to the Rock Point Estates subdivision.
Mayor, I move that we accept the conditional acceptance of Rock Point Estate.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Severin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Barker. We'll go with that. Any further questions? All in favor of the approval of the conditional acceptance of Rock Point Estates, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. You want to move on to the Barker Depot, Dylan?
Yes, Barker Depot was a subdivision that just across from 2600 and 300 East. It was recorded in July 2019. Water, sewer, storm drain, approximately 300 or 700 feet of road with curb and gutter, 6-foot sidewalks. and 3 streetlights with a striping plan on the pavement. Those were all part of the approved improvements. Based on the recommendation from the city engineer, the final inspection has been completed on Barker Depot, and it has been found up to city code and standards. One thing with this development is there's 3 streetlights that they work. We're working with the developer on a repair. So approving the improvements, I won't send the escrow release to the agent until that repair is made.
Okay. Any questions for Dylan? I believe the road is the 300 east that runs from 2550 to 26 or 2700 is.
Correct. And that was
the
paved
area.
in like 2020.
Okay. No questions. I'd look for a motion then to give final approval on acceptance of the Barker Depot.
I'll make a motion that we accept the final acceptance of Barker Depot from Dylan.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Watson. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. Any further discussion on the issue? Mr. Pulver, any discussion?
Nope.
I'll take that as a no. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Did we hear from Councilmember Pulver?
Can you hear me or no?
Not that I heard.
Yeah, okay.
He's not muted.
I'm just asking whether we need to record his abstaining from the vote.
Can you hear me? It was working.
Okay. We'll classify his as an abstention, but the motion passes unanimously. Okay. Somebody want to send Chris an email and find out who's going to be rejoining us? All right, we're going to move on now to item number 7 on our agenda. That is public comments. And just a reminder, if you'd help us by limiting your comments to no longer than 5 minutes and stay focused on city business, we'd appreciate it. So with that, if you want to make a comment or anyone who's online would like to make a comment, then please step up to the podium here and state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden. So with that, we'll start our public comments portion of our agenda this evening.
Good evening. Appreciate this opportunity. I want to start with the fact that understanding your position, I understand your service and we appreciate it in the community. Also apologize, there was an item discussed last week and I had some conflicting views, but I had to leave early. So I still feel important about them and I want you to be aware of my thoughts on that. It had to do with the sewer backup.
What's your
issue.
name for the record?
It's John Arrington, sorry. I appreciated the discussion was there, but I didn't agree with your assessment for a couple of reasons. I know there was some discussion about, well, isn't that in the budget or not? Well, I think the budget you're primarily talking about was what you have to do with property taxes. That happens to be in what's called a governmental fund, which means it's funded basically by the taxes. To me, the issue you were talking about has to do with a proprietary fund. And those funds are basically funded by charges for services and function as a business. And the one we're talking about was the sewer fund, but there's the water fund and the solid waste. All of those generate most of their revenue from a charge for some service that's provided. And my thinking is that I pay for my sewer to be transported to the solid waste or to the sewer district. And in this instance, the system failed to do what people were paying to have done, and it backed up into a resident's house, which caused considerable damage. It was reported $40,000. It's just my opinion that the operation of this fund should be based on what goes on. You charge for a service and you have to supply that service. And it's not tied as solidly to a budget process because the whole operation is based on charging money and providing the service. Anyway, I just feel like we pay for a service to be provided. And in this instance, somebody's sewage did not make it to the sewage plant and was backed up into somebody else's house. And my opinion is that that is an operation expense and should have been covered by the city. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Anyone else this evening like to make a comment? And John, please let us know if there's anyone online who would like to comment.
Hi, my name is Jason Westbrook. I'm a resident of North Ogden City and I'm a business owner in North Ogden City. I made my notes so that I take less of your time tonight. I'm here to speak on item number 10 to reduce required parking setback on Washington Boulevard. I'm trying to get the setback changed from 20 feet back from the property line to 6 feet back from the property line. If we are able to change the code, it will allow us to add 8 much needed parking stalls facing east to west towards Washington Boulevard. North Ogden City changed the wording of code 11-19-3, paragraph 3, sentence 5. Parking setback on the side roads is now 14 feet behind the top back curb of the street. Which means on 1900 that we would be able to cut into our green space and actually widen our parking lot. By widening our parking lot on that north side, if we're able to pass the setback on Washington, that will actually allow us to even pick up 1, maybe 2 more additional parking. So that would be a total of 10 possibly. Our parking lot now sits lower than the sidewalk on the east side going towards Washington. So if we're able to change the parking setback on Washington, we'll need to install a retaining wall, which will put our parking lot lower than our lawn. We could even build a retaining wall above the grass to give some visual relief if needed. The parking, to have parking 6 feet off the property line towards Washington is not less visually appealing or less safe than being able to build a building 0 feet off the property line. I could keep going on about all the things that are less than 6 feet back from the property line on Washington, but all of our time is valuable. I won't go into everything. We currently have 9,600 square feet of green space. We're only required to have 4,000 square feet of green space. I'm asking to be able to use our property to benefit our customers, our community, and our business. Thank you for your time and your service. I hope I've earned your support in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone online, John?
No raised hands.
Okay. You just state your name and tell us if you're a resident of North Ogden.
For sure. I'm Ben Palmer. I'm not a resident of North Ogden, but I'm here from Congressman Blake Moore's office. So I just wanted to congratulate you on the new facility. Congressman Moore was able to tour it with Chief Quinney yesterday, and he was very impressed. And then I also just want to share that if there's anything we can do for you or the city or the residents, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to keep that line of communication open. So thank you.
Send money.
We'll do what we can.
Anyone else this evening that would like to comment?
My name is Jackie Hogan. I'm a resident of North Ogden. And our neighbors get some of these lovely letters from the city saying, hey, you need to apply City Code 57 on getting your landscaping done because it's a newer area. And since COVID happened, some people took a little break and didn't do it. And one of the codes that you have, and I looked up all the codes I could find on landscaping in the city because we have across from us a retention pond, which I emailed last year to try to get them to come and take care of it because it's an eyesore. And it's also got a big gap under the fence where any kid could go underneath of it if they wanted to. And nothing was ever done. And it's an eyesore and it's a weed infested area. And the weeds are waist high all over, dotting the whole entire side. And sometimes those weeds go across the sidewalk. And that is we have 20 houses on our street, but we have 8 mailboxes that have 10 plus in each one. So we have 80 other people coming to get their mail there. So it's a busy street. So one of the codes was 11-20-1, maximize city aesthetics and maintain site qualities. So we were just hoping is this petition that we'll present along with our wish that the city would actually take care of the weeds or landscape it so that we don't have any issues.
You say you have a petition signed? here?
Yeah.
You want to leave that with us this evening? What's the approximate area? Just to remind me.
From Lakeview Drive, just to the Pleasant View border. It's not even like it's a block and then a block.
Okay.
3900 North.
Okay. Thank you. And if you'd like to stay with us, we'll have our Director of Public Works address our position on that. Dave, if you'd be prepared to talk to us about that. Okay. Any other comments this evening? John, any online?
Nope.
All right, then we will proceed to our next item on the agenda. I believe that we're recommending a postponement of this action, John. Members of CenturyLink were unable to be with us this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Do we need a motion to postpone that then, since it's on the agenda, John?
Yes.
Looking for a motion to postpone item number 8, which is a discussion or action to approve a franchise agreement referencing agreement A3-2024 with CenturyLink. Do we have a motion to postpone?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Barker. We have a second.
A second.
Second by Councilmember Severing. Any questions? Councilmember Pulver, are you back with us?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor of postponing, as mentioned in the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Move on to item number 9 on our agenda. This will be presented by our city manager and attorney, John Call. This is regarding Cherry Days Committee regarding their desire to become a 501c3. John?
Thank you, Mayor. So council, this is not something that you need to necessarily approve tonight because I think this is kind of the beginning of the process in working with this group. They have, last year they put on the Cherry Days event, had a lot of attendance, a lot of participation, and a lot of activities. And we've been talking with them about becoming a 501c3 and just taking it on entirely. And then they would, as they got donations from members of the community, instead of routing them through the city, they'd run it through like it's a separate business, separate entity. But they would want the city to continue to have a commitment to sponsor the event. And we can talk a little bit more about what that means next week at our work session, but also a financial commitment from the city. There are other organizations like this out there that do community events. A good example is the Ogden Rodeo is a 501c3. They use Ogden City facilities for stuff, but they are a completely separate entity. Provo City also has a similar organization that runs their 4th of July celebration. And there are others that essentially it's just a completely separate entity that partners with the city and works towards providing a community event. It allows them to have boosters and donors and really keep it going. I know Councilmember Barker was on the committee last year as the council representative, and they would be suggesting, if we're heading down this path, that the bylaws include a requirement that there be a council member and the council member's spouse if they were interested in being on that committee. And they wouldn't want, I don't want to say they want complete autonomy from the city because they know that we need to work together. But one of those things that the council and them would need to work through is exactly how the decisions would be made, what autonomy they had, and how they'd have to account for any money the city was giving them. As I mentioned, historically, we've done about $25,000 to $50,000, depending on the donations for that year for the event. And so if the council's amenable, then you could vote and say you're in favor of moving this direction, or we could just kind of do a head nod and we could work with them, the mayor, Councilmember Barker, and myself in starting to work on some of those details on providing that path forward.
Yeah.
So,
Council, my recommendation would be that we postpone this action. I'm not adverse to them pursuing the 501c3 designation, but I think we need to help them understand what the expectations of the city are in a city-sponsored event. I think anytime there's money spent or committed, the councils, it's good for them to know. We surely don't want to meddle in their business. They did a fantastic job last year. But I would say that we probably need to define what the expectations are of the council in regards to oversight and involvement in a city-sponsored event. So that's just my recommendation, but you're the council, you have the vote. So Councilmember Watson?
Is that something that John writes up and then we just vote on, or is that something that we need to research and provide feedback and bring back to the agenda?
I think it's on the work session for next week.
Okay.
So we'll have a discussion on that and see kind of which direction the council would like to head and what that involves. So that's on the agenda next week for the work session. So yeah, there'll be hopefully good discussion on that.
I am curious, maybe this is a question for John. I assume money hasn't been spent yet from this group. Maybe Ryan knows that. And if this 501c3 starts, would it be in enough time for them to move all their money and transactions through the 501c3 and be separate from us? I remember last year, there was quite a bit of complications with going through the city when they were just spending it themselves. And so if we were able to execute that quickly, maybe that would make things smoother for them.
So two questions there. First one is, technically all the money has been spent because Charities happens on July 4th, which is 4 days after the budget year. So the next budget year, which hasn't been approved yet, in theory, what they would do this year is they would start organizationally restructuring themselves to become a 501c3, but they wouldn't become a 501c3 until fall, something like that. So everything would still run through the city this year, but this would be kind of helping them move down that path because they don't want to start putting paperwork together and stuff if we're not amenable to that.
But there's not an urgency is my question.
No.
Thank you.
I think we've got some time. I think one thing the council needs to have as we discuss this is we're basically turning over what I would call one of the significant events in our city that helps us as a community. And we need to make sure the structure is adequate because the last thing we want to do is turn it over to a 501c3 and then not have an adequate organization to put on the event. So we'll need to look at the structure and see, how we can assure the event continues on. So I think some questions need to be answered, but I think we've always talked about heading this direction and a 501c3. We just need to get further information. So Councilmember Dalpas.
Thanks, Mayor. One thing I remember from last year is there was a discussion about Cherry Days becoming, the committee being self-sustaining. So I think in any consideration on this committee becoming a 501c3, we could kind of have a plan that winds down the funding, the amount of funding. So it could be, $50,000 this year, 40, 30, 20, 10, because if I remember correctly, they reported back some pretty good initial numbers from their first year, and they felt confident that they would be able to sustain it pretty well. So I think it would be smart to give them a runway that they know for sure what they're going to have, and they can have a goal to work towards self-sustaining.
Yeah, I think they actually had excess revenues over expenditures last year of about $19,000 that we kind of thought would be seed money to start developing this. I think the other thing that was discussed last year that's, I think makes it somewhat difficult, but is essential, is having adequate controls over the receipt and expenditure of funds while it's, basically a city. It's not just a city sponsored event. I mean, it's a city event. So questions to be answered. So I think we should have, that discussion on, city sponsored events and what the council's intentions are going forward and what this runway may be that Councilmember Dow passed. So I would suggest we postpone any action on this tonight. I'm not feeling, and I could be wrong, that there doesn't seem to be any opposition with adequate information to head down the path of a 501c3. We just need more information. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion to postpone this item number 9 on our agenda?
Mayor, I move that we postpone item number 9, which is considering Cherry Days, the Cherry Days Committee becoming a 501c3.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Pulver. Any further questions? Councilmember Watson?
So we won't be able to vote on this at the work session next week. But is this going to be something that we need to vote on? Is that something that's going to happen in the next meeting? Is this going to be held? Is this going to hold up their planning in any way?
I think this year they're kind of planning on status quo. This is kind of moving towards that in the future. So Councilmember Barker could probably answer that better than I, but I don't think this will impair their plans for this year.
No. Like John said, I don't think they're not planning on utilizing it this year, so.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of postponing this item on our agenda to a future meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion to postpone passes unanimously, and I believe Ryan is keeping track of these things we're postponing to make sure they get on a future event. Is that correct, Ryan?
That's correct, Mayor. I have a handy dandy little spreadsheet right here that I have added those 2 items to just.
Is that new software handy dandy? Is that a
Handy
new term?
dandy, yeah,
Software?
certified.
Perfect. Awesome. Good. All right, we're going to go on to item number 10. And this will be presented by our Community and Economic Development Director, Scott Hess. And this is in regards to consideration to amend the North Ogden Code 11-19-3 C5, which is regarding design and location of parking spaces. I think the issue that Big O Tires referenced it there. So Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On February 21st, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item. We have applicant and business owner Jason Westbrook, who's requested a change to the city's ordinances regarding the parking. Big O is located on Washington Boulevard and 1900 North on the corner, and their parking lot has a significant grass area behind the back of the curb, back of the sidewalk, and where their parking begins on the east side along Washington Boulevard. I think the applicant mentioned it's about 26 feet or so. When that site plan was originally approved, the city had greater landscaping requirements than we do now in the commercial zones, but that 20 feet, as far as I can tell, has been in the code for a significant amount of time. So that's one that I've inherited being here just a little less than 3 years. And we've applied that forward to a number of businesses. So if you can picture in front of Smith's and the gas station there, AutoZone, Beans and Brews, Walgreens, Maverick, and then kind of on down the corridor where we've had new development. We haven't had a new parking lot located closer than 20 feet to the property line for several years. Planning Commission in their public hearing did consider the item. They heard from the applicant, debated, and I provided a copy of the minutes, ultimately decided to recommend not to amend the ordinance. From a professional planning standpoint, there's really not a lot of hard and fast rules on parking. You can locate it really anywhere. The 20-foot buffer provides a bit of a visual buffer. It's more or less likely, that a car would get hit than a sign or a building. Buildings can be located closer to the street. In some areas along Washington Boulevard, the Planning Commission can elect up to requiring 0 lot line development. So like the cannery building, you could build all the way up to the property line. And signs are approximately 6 feet or so off, but the code currently says all areas of the parking lot, with exception of ingress and egress, are no closer than 20 feet from the front property line. So this one really comes down to a determination of what the council wants the city to look like, what serves the residents best, what serves those businesses best, and understand that decisions that are related to, one businesses that's been really successful and kind of outgrown their site in many ways, but decisions to change the code will affect and impact everybody along the corridor. All future development and everybody else, even existing developments, could come back and amend their parking, amend their landscaping, and change their parking configuration. So I leave with you the Planning Commission recommendation to leave the ordinance as is, and we do have the applicant here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Hess? Or Jason is with us this evening, if you'd like any further questions from him.
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Pulver, please.
So I guess during part of the discussion, there was talk about whether or not the detention pond in the back could be used as well. Is that something that's still being researched, or is that something that's a no-go?
So the applicant could reconfigure their detention. The detention sits on the northwest side of the site along 1900 North, and the parking lot's currently pulled back. So there's engineering solutions for all of that. If you want to put a storm tech system and underground your detention, applicant could certainly do that and look at ways to bring the parking further north. Jason, he indicated, the ordinance change on those roads that are not Washington Boulevard and 2700 North. We had an instance where the ordinance had been changed to parking on those non-collector streets is allowed 14 feet from the top back of curb. And if you do the math, that allows for a 4-foot park strip, a 5-foot sidewalk, a 1-foot area, which we always retain behind that sidewalk, and then 4 feet. And this allows a car to nose in against the parking and not have the overhang affect the pedestrian way. When we did the full Title 11 zoning code rewrite, we had somewhere on the order of like 40 or 50 zoning text amendments that had happened that we tried to roll all together, and that one was inadvertently left out. So Planning Commission's heard that item. That will be coming to City Council in as little as 2 weeks, but it might be the next meeting after, depending on the minutes. But Planning Commission did want to reinstate that ordinance, which would allow the parking lot to be closer to 1900, but still retains the 20-foot off of Washington Boulevard. So to answer your question, Councilmember Pulver, with engineering and some funds, all things are possible regarding that storm detention basin.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Pulver. Councilmember Dalpas.
I like having the 20-foot buffer along Washington visually. I think it makes sense. But I keep going back to one of the things that Mr. Westbrook emailed us about over the weekend, or maybe yesterday, was that he originally, back in late 90s or early 2000s, somewhere around there, he tried to get his building apparently closer to Washington. And we, at that time, based on the ordinances, we said, sorry, no can do. There's a certain amount of landscaping required. So is there a way that we can make an exception for this business? The reason I say that is I like to have the 20-foot, and we've had several brand new businesses that have come in and have adhered to that 20-foot requirement. But since the uniqueness of this property, where they came on at a time where they wanted to be closer, but we told them no, and things changed since then, is there a proper avenue that we could go down to allow them to do what they're asking to do, whereas we continue the 20-foot setback requirement on all new businesses?
Scott, that's a good point. Would that fit into a variance, seeking a variance?
No,
without
variance,
changing the ordinance?
No, variance law is really specific in Utah. So the applicant would have to show how this isn't a financial burden, it wasn't self-imposed, it wasn't, and that they have something inherently really unique about their property that takes away an essential property right that other people enjoy. And I think that on a site where, a current Big O, and this is from the applicant, I understand, is that a current franchise for a Big O requires 2 acres, and this site's sitting at right about 1 acre. So what we have is a really successful business that's outgrown its site. Does that count as something that's inherently different or super unique about the property? Things that win on variances are, I bought a piece of property and 50% of it's impacted by 30% slope, or a large percentage of it is impacted by wetlands. So I have to have a unique configuration for my business to even just enjoy the basic property rights that everybody else gets. This one's, perfectly square, relatively flat. It's, all of the things that I think they'd have an uphill battle. So for carving it out, I mean, you could create the Big O on 1900 parking requirement code. I mean, you could literally write a specific code for this. I don't know if that constitutes spot zoning. That'd be a good question for our city attorney. But we don't typically do that. I mean, we don't, other than maybe one specific zone where it affects multiple property owners, we typically don't write like onesie twosie property ordinances or codes. And as far as I know, codes are administrative. We don't create a lot of single point exceptions for them.
I think Mr. Westbrook's intentions are he has a successful business. He's just trying how to keep it successful. So, it is a good business, but it is difficult to onesies. I think you'd probably have to look at changing the entire ordinance. Councilmember Watson, let's go with you.
So after I listened to the Planning Commission meeting twice on this topic, and I really appreciated their expertise and their wisdom and the conversation that Mr. Hess had with them. And I see the value of having that corridor, and whether that corridor needs to remain 20 feet or not is, to me, a really big decision, because it's something that's existed forever and it would impact so many businesses and properties that are right there on Washington. And so I hesitate to do something drastic there. I wish that it was like, oh, if we move it to 19 from 20, then he would be able to have what he needs, and it's barely any change from what we've always done. But moving from 20 to 6 seems like a really big difference to me. And I really want this to happen. I have talked to Scott this week, and I've talked to our city engineer, Eric, and I've been trying to think about if there's any other things that haven't been thought of, just to see if there's a way we can help this business without sacrificing that corridor. I realize that moving that detention pond could help potentially, but it is an expensive thing. And so I feel like I realize that today is not the conversation where we're having the RDA grant approvals that are going to happen within the next year here. But I wish there was a way that we could make that partnership now on this RDA grant with him, so that we could help him move that detention pond either to the north side of 1900 or bury it underground or something, because I feel like that's a really expensive fix, but still is something that could help him. I did have another question. The electrical boxes, I remember he has brought up a couple that are on his property. If we were to be able to move those, or if he moved those, I guess, paid for those to be moved, that wouldn't even help us if we didn't change the corridor, right? Because they are up along Washington. Is that correct?
Yep, as far as I know, yep.
I also was toying with the idea of changing our code to remove the parking islands. Every 10 stalls, we have to have a parking island for relief. And I realize that staff doesn't recommend that as either, but I figure if there's something that could be compromised, maybe that one is less impactful than to giving up the corridor. That's one thing that I'd be willing to explore more. I did also think about what if we were able to move his north curb south a ways and add on-street parking at a 45-degree angle along 1900. But after talking with Mr. Hess and Mr. Casperson, realizing that violates several ordinances that we have, and that things like fire hydrants would have to move. And so that would be more difficult probably than it's worth. But I'm just trying to like think outside the box if there was a way that this could happen without sacrificing that corridor effect that we have throughout our whole mainstream of our city. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hess, have you thought of anything creative that could help Mr. Westbrook? You're a planner and
Really,
got any ideas?
if the business could grow and we could help facilitate finding a spot in the area in the city that's 2 acres, I think that would be the best long-term solution. I think anything we do in a short term, it nets them eight stalls or 10 stalls, and that helps for a little bit now. But there are days when there's more than 10 cars that are out on the street. So it's not a total solution. It helps for sure, but it doesn't solve the entire problem, which is really that the business is more successful than the size of the site that they have.
Councilmember Severing.
Well, Mayor, I've thought a lot about this over the last few days. I spoke to Jason. It is one of those issues that's kind of hard. I think Scott has brought up a really good point. Mike, previous owner of Big O, and now Jason, his brother, they've created a very successful business. And go with me on this, but in my mind, in 1984, when I graduated from Weber, if somebody had told me there'd been a Big O or a McDonald's in North Ogden, I would have said, you were crazy, right? So as I look at population in 1999 in North Ogden, there was 14,000 people in North Ogden. In 2024, we've got 22,000 people. So an 8,000 member increase divided by 5, average family size perhaps, gives us 1,600 families or homes, 2 cars per home. That's 3,200 cars. So I'm just thinking that in 1999, when it was built, I don't think they anticipated this kind of growth. And with them being a very successful business, I would hate to see them being penalized for just something simple as 10 parking lots. Parking stalls. So I'm kind of in favor of amending the ordinance.
And I think the question too that Scott has is what happens when there's 42,000 people?
I know. Well, that's
we
going to
surely
be
want
something
Big O in
that
our
Jason
city.
takes into account.
Yeah, surely want them in our city, but Councilmember Barker?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First, I think it's actually pretty. It's right. Sorry. I actually think it's pretty commendable that we have a business that's trying to do the right thing. They came in and asked for help a couple months ago, and we helped them, and they still want to do more to help their own business. My question, we haven't really decided what we're doing with the 10-foot sidewalk on Washington. So if we change this ordinance, how will it affect that? And then my second question is, what's your opinion on this?
So the 10-foot sidewalk happens within the Washington right of way, so it doesn't affect that. So there's plenty of room between the property line where it stops and the full right of way with Washington Boulevard, so that won't happen or be an issue. Parking's hard. The closer you get to major roadways, at least more urban areas typically do more screening on parking lots. And I personally, we all spend a lot of money on our cars. We keep them nice. There's 8 million car washes around. So it's not like we drive a bunch of really ugly cars in our area. I mean, we still though, as a, planning world, try to hide those cars behind screening and push them away. So I don't really know there. There's kind of a difference between what we value and then what we want to look at with cars just sitting there. I do think that as you drive up and down Washington Boulevard, even from Kings Plaza, that's, that has that 20-foot landscaping strip, and it hasn't, always stayed green, but Bella's Boutique has it. And you just have this corridor essentially along both sides of Washington Boulevard where there's a green running landscape strip along the entire length there. And I do know several businesses who have approached us on this. We've held it firm at 20 feet for property owners. So this wouldn't be the only business that would come back and rearrange their parking lot, even though it does have a significant cost for property owners. We'll end up with more parking lots that are getting closer and closer to the corridor. That happens. I mean, there's plenty of really busy streets all over our region that have lots of annual daily traffic and parked cars right at the back of the curb, or back of the sidewalk. It's just really determined by what you guys want your city to look like.
So what was your recommendation? Did I miss that?
My recommendation was to keep it essentially. I mean, we have had many businesses in the same plight, asking us for this, and they've had to get creative, or they've had to, change business practices or kind of live with it. Washington Boulevard is a pretty significant barrier. It's a wide road. We have some funds right now. We've talked to UDOT about, we've applied to our Wasatch Trent Regional Council for some transportation funds to improve crossings across Washington Boulevard. And you have, a sea of unused parking that you can throw a rock to from this business. So I would love to see private property owners work together to have a shared business, shared parking solution, whether that's through, contract agreement or something. But the majority of the parking over at Kings Plaza sits unutilized 365 days a year. And if we can make it safe for people to cross those businesses, I would just as soon see we better utilize the parking that exists as opposed to continuing to expand parking and hard surface in each individual parcel.
Thanks, Scott. So I've heard some comments that were concerned about the visual aspect of cars.
That's what it seems to be. I don't know.
However, my memory serves me right. We were actually asking them to utilize parking on Washington Boulevard right out in front of the organization.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit confused, just asking questions here. It seems like we encourage them to seek parking on Washington Boulevard, which I think Mr. Westbrook thought was not safe for the business, but I think we're willing to look at that and allow parking. So I'm a little bit confused about the visual.
Yeah. I mean, UDOT, we don't control UDOT roads. And so on-street parking on UDOT, we can count it. And we don't, for any of our new businesses that come in, if you're any new business, we don't count on-street parking towards your parking minimums for the fact that, one, we don't control the corridor of Washington Boulevard, and on-street parking up until the ordinance was changed, we disallowed during active snowstorms. So we didn't count it because it was kind of freebie parking during the summer months. But I don't think staff recommended, I didn't personally recommend.
But I'm
that
also
they park
confused on that because I believe at Prominence Point, to meet the parking standard, they were allowed 50 parking spots on 1900 to comply with their parking ratio. Is that correct?
Originally, their new site plan does not include the 1700 north parking stalls, and I inherited that project.
You're not in trouble.
I'm just, kind of looking at the things here. So
It's 1700.
yeah, 1700, whatever, somewhere down south there.
Right.
1700 is correct. So any other questions of Mr. Hess? Councilmember Dalpas?
Question for Scott. It seems like it would be quite the heroic effort to put a under parking lot detention basin on that northwest corner. But if that was done, do we have an estimate of how many parking spots that would open up for their business right there?
No, I don't know the width of that on the side of their ingress and egress. We could count that, or we could look at that with the applicant and see what it does.
Okay. And then my other question was, which was mentioned in the discussion already, John, can we spot zone this area to allow it to have 6 feet parking and the rest of Washington not, from a legal perspective or whatever?
The best way to do that would be to assign it a different zone. It'd be really hard to write an ordinance that says in this particular spot of the commercial zone, this is allowed. Be better to say it's allowed under a C3 zone and then a zone property C3. I mean, that would be the easiest way to do it if you're just trying to do it in one. And you are allowed to spot zone. Utah Supreme Court has said you can spot zone. So,
you'd have to be consistent in that application. For anybody that had the same situation as Big O, I think you'd have to be consistent in your application of that zoning, whatever you decide. So, Councilmember Severing.
Well, I was just thinking, I think Scott brought up a good point. and it went right out my mind. So I can't think of what I was going to say, Scott.
All right.
Oh,
well,
no, I just thought of it.
Okay.
I'm
good.
57 now, you guys. I was just thinking that I think it's interesting. I mean, in my 6 years on the council, we've never had anybody approach us about this kind of an issue. So I don't think it's going to become something that's going to be occurring too frequently. But if you mention that there has been other businesses that have approached the city about it, maybe it is time to look at an adjustment in the ordinance. But I definitely favor the idea of spot zoning and trying to reward a business that's trying to be successful.
Is that a hand raised,
Yes,
Councilmember
yes.
Watson? It kind of looked like it was partial.
I'm gathering my thoughts, but I still
Okay.
would like to say.
Go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
Thank you. Scott, when you said, let's see if there's another property that we can get and do a swap that's 2 acres. I'm sorry, maybe I should know this already, but when you said it that way, it made it sound like there was something that the city could maybe do to help facilitate that. Can you expound on that?
That would be an eligible use of RDA funds. The city could help with that, whether that's acquisition costs, or if the city owns a piece of property, we have property along Washington Boulevard a little bit further north, but the city could partner with a business in a number of ways. And we could look at, tax increment financing. We could do funds to help them with the construction of their business upgrades, that, any number of things. I don't know if that's enough. That's a huge financial lift for anybody right now, but.
Okay, other questions? Councilmember Pulver, do you have a question or comment?
Well, I guess, thanks, Mayor. Just the one thing that, when we open up something like that, to do spot zoning or something like that, that kind of opens up a big can of worms. I know we're trying to help the business grow and that type of thing. And spot zoning, I'm not too happy, to me, it's more of a hassle than it is trying to do that. And like Scott said, I think if the key thing is what do you want your city to look like? So, that you have to weigh that with the business and, the kind of overall city plan. So that's kind of my concern, is that we start poking it and taking care of 1 acre, and then all of a sudden we're trying to put out fires from 95 acres. But anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Scott, do we know how many parking spots would be available on Washington Boulevard if they so desired to try that?
On-street parking, or if they moved it?
On-street parking, how many parking places could they get there?
Probably 5.
No, that's not the preferred.
If they've got room for 10 and parking stalls are 9 by 19, then they probably have about 5 on-street parking stalls on Washington Boulevard in front of their frontage.
What other questions? Councilmember Severing?
Well, I just want to bring up a thought that it might be true that spot zoning is something that we don't do often, but it's still permitted for a reason. And then the second thought that I had is, I really think that if we permit this, the visual impairment is going to be quite negligible, in my opinion.
Councilmember Delpez?
Mr. Westbrook had his hand up, so if we decide to entertain him, he's just so you know. And then one thing I was thinking about, and I don't mean to bring something up from the past, but I'm going to. I was not in favor of allowing on-street parking during snowstorms. So I think if we work with Big O we get this spot zoned, we get the parking spots put in there, I really think we need to go back and say, hey, that special exception that was granted is no longer, because I never felt good about it. And so I think we're working with them, and hopefully they could work with us on that, is kind of my opinion.
Yeah, and I think they're looking for incremental parking spots over what they have. So
I'm
if
not
we-
saying it's a perfect solution, but
if we took that away and, if they've got 8 there, and I understand your comment, but I'm not sure that would meet their needs. But anything's possible. What other questions before I ask Mr. Westbrook if he'd like to come up and further comment?
Can I just
Councilmember
ask,
Watson, go ahead.
can I just ask for specificity on your comment that spot zoning, Mayor, we need to be consistent. So when you say that, when we spot zone, that means that spot zone that rule is only applicable to that one spot, that one lot, that one business owner. But when you're saying be consistent, you're saying if other people come and ask for their own spot zone, that we should think about. So what I'm trying to say is, if we did do a spot zone, then those same regulations for this particular property would only apply to this particular property unless we decide to vote on another spot zone and be consistent on a separate spot zone. Is that correct?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe that is correct. For instance, if you look at Alan Curbs, who built that new building down there and is growing his business. You look at down by the Taco Bell and the sushi place and things of that nature. If they outgrew their business and they came and said, hey, I would like the same opportunity given to Mr. Westbrook, I think, the council would have to they don't have to, but to be consistent in the application of the need. And I think Mr. Westbrook has identified a need, but if somebody else comes and asks for that same need under the same circumstances, yeah, I think, it would probably
They'd have to
be
go through the process.
just like, just like anybody else. Okay, Mr. Westbrook, and before you come up, I just want to announce our voting tonight on roll call voting. We'll start with Councilmember Watson, move to Councilmember Barker, and then we'll go to Councilmember Pulver, wrap around with Councilmember Severing, and end up with Councilmember Dalpas in our voting this evening. Any more for Scott while he's here? Mr. Westbrook, I thought you were just waving, but if you'd like to come up and make a comment, feel free.
So we have talked with Planning Commission about relieving the detention pond. From everything that I've been told is it's going to be expensive. I mean, it's something that's going to be astronomical. I would still like to maybe pursue that in a chance to even get more parking. But the problem is right now I'm out of parking. I'm trying to use the property that I own to get the best amount of parking out of it. Like I says, we have 9,600 square feet of green space which we only are required to have 4,000. A lot of that is that detention pond. So we do need to cut into that front. Scott and I had talked about this before about possibly North Ogden helping us find another place and building. That's an astronomical amount. Then not only that, but if I move out of there, then I'm leaving my business open for another shop to move in and take money from us. I mean, that's just some of the things I was talking about before that I said I wasn't going to bring up. Okay, now I'll bring up. Right next to us on the north, we have the car wash, but in front of Lock It Up Storage. They just put in their doggy wash thing right there. They put in painted stripes for parking right next to it. That is not 20 feet off of their property line. Yes, the car wash is grandfathered in, but that frontage there isn't. So I don't know why that isn't a problem. Because I went by there and they actually have painted parking stalls there. And it's just right behind the sidewalk there. There are other places that are closer than the 20 feet. There are. I mean, yes, some of them are grandfathered in. I don't know what happened on the rest, but we've been trying to do this. We tried doing this when we first moved in. I mean, we're trying to grow. Well, we have grown. We're trying to make the best use of it. But the other problem that I see is I've been told, Wayment told me about his property and was asking about, possibly us buying his property and building over there. That's something that I've looked at, but it's like to do that, then still what do I do with my shop? I'm still going to have customers coming to my shop thinking that we're taking care of them, but we're going to be across the street. But in that, when I talked with Wayment, he was telling me that North Ogden City, if any frontage on Washington, North Ogden City wants it to be commercial. Well, if you're not going to help the businesses are not going to move in. I mean, there needs to be some concessions for the businesses. I'm not asking for the world. I'm just asking for 14 feet, you know? And I don't understand the visual effect, the visual corridor, because driving down the road, you go past my building and you have the car wash sitting right there, right up close to their property line. We can put a building on the property line. How is that visually more aesthetic than it is to have a vehicle out there? Why is everybody so opposed to vehicles? When we moved in out here, shortly after we moved in, within 5 or 6 years, we got told that everybody on the city council did not like us because we were a dirty business. They didn't want to see that, you know? So it's like, I still feel like we're in that mindset. We have vehicles out there so you tell me, if we don't want to see the vehicles on Washington, how are the people going down Washington? They're inside a vehicle. So how is that a bad thing to see a vehicle parked? I mean, it'll be more than 20 feet back from the curb on Washington, but it's not going to be 20 feet back from the property. So I'm asking to be able to utilize my property to try and grow my business.
So I have a question, Mr. Westbrook. I was recently at a meeting and a gentleman talked about how farmers plow straight rows. And they fixate on something quite in the distance and stay focused on that. Because if they look in front of the tractor while they're plowing, the row looks like this. So I think I heard that any new Big O is required to have 2 acres of property.
Correct.
For a reason, right? Because that helps their business to
Yeah.
be successful.
Yeah, that just
Even if-
changed about 5 years ago.
Yeah, even if we give these 8 parking spots, my concern is that we're not looking down the road, because there's a reason they have 2 acres, right?
Yeah.
It's because they know you guys are successful and you do a lot of business. My concern is that this long-term is not going to solve the problem that you face now. I don't know what the long-term solution is, though, is within the affordability of a big old franchise. But there's a reason that there's 2 acres, right? And so how's your business going to be successful long-term on basically 0.96 acres when we're going to look at growing to 42,000 square feet? I mean, I'm trying to look at the object down the row so we can keep things straight. I'm worried that this is not going to help you accomplish the success of your business that you're seeking. Because if we've outgrown at 20,000, 22,000, we're surely going to outgrow at 42. So I'm just wondering if
Like
is
I
there a
says,
longer
right
term
now,
solution?
Like I says, right now, I'm trying to utilize the most of my property. And I will still be in compliance of the 4,000 square feet of green space. I just don't understand why I can't use my property. I've been told from when we built it, we were told that we couldn't have it this way. We couldn't have it this way. And it was all because of green space. We kept on getting told, well, you don't have enough green space. You don't have enough green space. We have over 9,600 square feet of green space. So I don't know exactly what the initial issue was.
Yeah, I
but
don't either.
I mean, we tried building our property right on Washington. We would have had our property on Washington. They told us no. Now the car wash next to us has been approved to be more forward. So now if you're heading north down Washington Boulevard, they block the view of our business. Now I've also been told that Lock It Up Storage is being allowed to build 5 feet off of the property line there on 1900. So I don't understand why we're going to be able to push buildings forward to get parking behind. But for current owners, for current businesses that have been doing business here, supporting North Ogden City for 25 years.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Westbrook. I think even had the city allowed you to build that closer to the thing, you'd have the same issue that you have today. And I'm unaware of this, John, or this 5 foot on Lock It Up.
So our commercial zone allows for buildings to be on zero lot line.
Well, they're just right across the street.
Yeah. Yeah, so their building is gonna be 5 feet back from the property line,
Because it's
but that
changed
will
over the
allow all
years.
their parking behind the building.
It's an archaic ordinance.
Well, it just amazes me that we're saying that we want the visual setback, but yet right across the street, we're 5 feet back.
And they're allowed to go to zero.
See, I like consistency, but that's interesting. Okay, Councilmember Dalpaz? Do you have
Yes,
further questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Westbrook. And, you know, the last thing that I want you to feel is this is a us versus them scenario, because your business is amazing and Big O's been around forever in North Ogden. So just want to like try to let you know, like this to me is not a us versus them thing. I mean that. As far as my question that I had, I'm just throwing it out there. If you do create the additional spaces on your business, if we make that happen somehow, would you be open to, and I understand that there's capacity issues, but would you be open to the winter issue being resolved and you don't park on the streets?
Well, and the thing is with the parking on the street for the winter parking, I actually sent an email saying, I don't think it should be approved the way it's worded. Because another business can come in and just say, well, this is the way it said, I can just park out there. What I was trying to get as far as the city parking was, okay, if the snow starts sticking, we're gonna pull the vehicles. That's what we did last year. Every time that the snow started sticking to the ground, we pulled the vehicles off the street so the plows could come through and clear. Other businesses are not gonna be as considerate as that. That's why I said, you know, in that wording, it needed to be something along the lines of, you know, unless that won't impede removal of snow. That was the big thing that I was pushing for, is as long as it won't impede removal of snow. But that never got put through. I didn't expect it to pass the way it was. I'm surprised it passed the way it was. And that's why I said that at the end of the meeting, that I was surprised that it passed the way it was. I have, on the first day that they approached me about the winter parking, it was in December and it was snowing, but it didn't leave anything on the ground. It's melting off as soon as it hits the ground. That's the first day that the police officer said that we needed to move our vehicles. There is nothing that's going to need to be plowed. We didn't even have to dust off our windows. So, I mean, I'm still going to take care of that. I'm going to still make sure that we get our vehicles off to not impede snow removal. But on that day, I have 18 vehicles on the street that are all employee vehicles. I don't want to have any customer vehicles out there. I will not have any customer vehicles out there, but I had 18 employee vehicles out there that we had to find a spot on the lot. We have a total of 30 spaces, 30 parking stall spaces right now, plus 2 handicap. So a total of 32 stalls. Now you take 18 cars and put it on there, how much do you got left? So I would like to use the winter parking as long as I can. And like I says, it's not something to where I'm looking to make it to where it's unsafe. We make sure that we take care of it so it's going to be safe. I want to make sure that we work with Public Works. I want to make sure that we work with the police department, you know, that we're all in this together to make it a better city.
Okay.
So John, maybe you could answer a question for me. If our commercial zone allows the 5-foot setback and they're in the commercial zone, what's the difference? What's other than the visual? But I don't understand if they're in the commercial zone and we have a business right across the street allowing for a 5-foot setback, why does the ordinance need to be amended then? How did Lock It Up get 5 foot back? If our
Because
ordinance allows it.
parking and businesses are treated differently on setbacks. So buildings and parking are treated differently on setbacks. And that
So what we're
was a
saying is-
decision of the previous council.
Buildings look better than cars. Is that what we're saying?
That's what the council decided, yes.
Maybe could you just park like Mercedes and BMWs out there on that side of the lot?
Well, and that was my other question is, okay, so you can build a building 0 feet off of your property line. So you can put it right on your property line. Now they're saying, well, it's also unsafe because, you know, a car could jump the curb and hit a parked car. Is it better to hit a parked car or to go through a building with somebody sitting there at their desk? So I don't understand that part of it. The other thing that I was told is that it was Washington Boulevard because of the speed limit. The speed limit's higher than the side street, so you can be closer to the street on side streets because it's less likely for something to happen. The electrical box that we were talking about on the northeast corner of my property, it's been hit twice. Once was from a person on Washington Boulevard, once was from a guy on 1900. So people have jumped the curbs, whether it's 35 miles an hour or whether it's 45 miles an hour.
Councilmember Watson, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. So if I understand this right, if what you're requesting tonight does pass, then you would get 8 more stalls on the east side. Is that right? And then if the 14-foot code comes through in a week or so, and I don't know if we even passed that because it's already been passed. Is that right, Scott? Okay, so let's say that one passes too, and you would get 2 more on the north. Is that right?
Yeah, so well, not on specifically on the north, so it'll be all on the east side facing east to west. So
I
on
see.
the
It would be 10 on the east then.
Yeah, where our east entrance way is, on the south side of that, we'd pick up 2 stalls there. If we're able to cut into the parking towards 1900, it will add on to the length of that.
Mhm,
So we
right.
can pick up 1 to 2
Okay.
facing east to
So
west. So we'd
if-
have a total of maybe 7 to 8 right there.
Total.
On the north side of
I
the
see. So if both of these things pass, then you only get 8 more stalls.
8 to 9.
Okay. So if both of these things pass, would it be possible for you to double stack your employee cars on the north side? I know it's inconvenient, but you have like what, 8 to 10 stalls along the north side along 1900, and you could make those deep enough, or is the 4 feet not enough for 2 vehicles? So then you couldn't double stack.
It'd be hard. That's what we have done in the past when it's been a snow day and we have to get them off the street is we'll actually just park them in a row all the way down that side. But ideally, like I said, if we go past this, and my next step after this is to go back with the planning commission, whether this passes or not, my next step is to go to the planning commission to see what I can do with the detention pond to see if I can get more there. I'm working to try and get as much out of the space that I have.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is that you could get 9 more if both of these things pass, but you have 18 employee vehicles on the road. So really, this only helps with part. I am with Councilmember Dalpas that if there was a way that we could clear 1900 to make that more safe, so whether it's winter or not, if there was a way that that could be more visibly open, that would be great. But it sounds like even if you get both of these things to swing, it's only taking half the vehicles off the road. I don't know. How many again did you say we could park along Washington, Scott? Was it
5?
5?
Well, technically, if you're looking at this, it's that with the winter parking, that's 10 days out of the year that it's going to be snowing, that the cars can't be there.
And I don't.
Because
I don't
any
think there's
other
a
time between 6 to 10, you can park out there on the street, even during the winter, as long as there's no snow.
Yeah, and
So-
the parking on 1900, in my opinion, is never an issue other than snowy days.
Yeah.
It's not, it hasn't been a problem historically. So I don't.
And that's why I said on there that there should have been more wording to that when we passed that. And all we really needed to add was, as long as it doesn't impede snow removal. I mean, it would be as simple as that.
So council, I think there's just a couple issues here that you need to look at is what is the preservation of the corridor on Washington Boulevard? Because it's a long-term decision, right? But my concern is that we're already impeding that corridor. Maybe I misunderstand, which is not unusual. But what we're saying is it's okay for a building to be 5 feet, but it's not okay to have a parking lot 5 feet. So we are talking apparently visual here. Because it seems like the setback has already been imperative. We think that having 20 feet is what makes our corridor really nice. We're already impairing that apparently. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying we've already made that decision in the commercial zone to let them have a 5-foot setback.
Well, and on the buildings, it's a 0 foot. The
There.
building, they can build right on the property line. And as far as business signs go, business sign is 5-foot setback. So if a business sign can be set back 5 feet, why can't we have a car at 6 feet?
So I'm just trying to kind of wrap this up a little bit here to
Sorry.
say, no, we want to surely hear, but I think, if there's some additional information we haven't already heard, let's proceed. Otherwise, Councilmember Dowpause, did you have
I'm ready to make a recommendation to vote on.
Okay, we have before us then this evening, if there are no more questions, we have a agenda item that is asking us to approve ordinance 24-06, which would amend the North Ogden City Title 11-19-3C5 Design and Location of Parking Spaces to reduce the required parking setback on Washington Boulevard. Do we have a motion to approve that agenda item?
I want to go a different direction, but if someone wants to make a motion on that, I can explain too, if you want.
Okay, looking for a motion. The agenda item tonight, and correct me wrong, if I'm wrong, John, Councilmember Dowpaz, I guess, can make any motion he wants, but we do need to adjust the agenda item, right? Which is a motion to approve.
So the way that land use ordinances work is the council can approve, deny, or amend, and it'd all be considered under the umbrella of that same ordinance.
So if somebody would like to amend or deny the motion, a motion to deny, I guess that's fine. So what is the motion?
So before I make a motion, I just want to say where my head is going with this. I want to allow for the creation of a separate zone for them to do what they want to do in this situation. And so I don't know how I'm going to make a motion out of that proposed wording. So I would suggest that is maybe if we do a straw poll or we have an idea as to where the council is leaning on this, I want to have a new zone and it would allow for at least 8 spots for Big O tires to add on. And if we have to postpone the agenda item so that we can put that into nice wording and verbiage and we officially vote on it next time, I'm okay with that too. So that's where I want to go.
I think if you decide to do a spot zone, that would take a whole different approach. You'd have to go back through the planning commission and the whole gamut. So I think the motion before us tonight is to deny, approve, or amend. And then if it is denied or amended, then there can be a inquiry about a spot zone, but that would take a whole different thing. I don't think we could approve a spot zone tonight.
You're correct, Mayor, because it'd be a different section of the code and we haven't held a public hearing with the planning commission yet.
So,
and if we're voting on allowing all of Washington to be that 6 foot, my vote now would be no. So,
okay, well,
yeah, so I'm just saying that I would be totally open to creating that new process, starting down the path of allowing that through a new zone.
okay, so let's address the issue tonight, which is to approve, deny, or amend the item. What is our motion this evening? Is a motion to approve the request here? Is it to amend it or is it to deny the request? What motion do we have tonight? Does anyone want to make a motion? I guess it could die for lack of a motion.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think I'm confused now because do we amend this now and then come back with the spot zoning or what, John? How do we handle this? Because I'm kind of confused myself.
So if you want, the options before the council are you can approve this language in 19-3 or amend that language or not approve it. But if you want to do a spot zone, or, you know, there's better names for it, but that's essentially what it is. Then we would need to craft specific language, take it to planning commission for a public hearing, and it would come back to you in probably 2 months would be my guess on timing.
But what do we do with tonight's?
You can either approve, deny, or amend tonight's, the language in front of you on the screen in front of you.
But you can't amend it to have a
But we
spot.
can't amend it to get a spot zone.
No, you cannot.
You couldn't say at Big O, they're allowed to do this, but nobody else.
So we're gonna deny it, knowing that.
Well, you're assuming, you're
Well,
assuming.
but for my clarification then, for us to deny it, knowing that we're gonna come back and create a spot zone.
Well, we may not.
May not,
It'll
depending on
address
what
it. It'll
everyone
address it.
else.
Wow.
Okay, Councilmember Barker, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, I'll make a motion. We approve. Is this an ordinance or?
Yep.
Ordinance, what ordinance number are we?
It's 2024-06.
Okay. Mayor, I make a motion. We approve ordinance 2024-06, amending North Ogden City Code 1119-3 as presented.
Okay, do we have a second to the motion? Looks like motion fails for lack of a second. Now, Councilmember Severing, if you want to come back and bring a spot zone to the council and go through the process, that can surely happen. But that doesn't mean it's going to be approved. The council would have to go through the same situation as this evening. So at this point in time, motion fails for lack of a second. Okay. I guess we won't need a roll call vote since it died for lack of a second. We'll move on now to item number 11. This is going to be led by, I think, Mr. Call. This is a discussion and action on the partnership on a ramp grant application for participation with the city for an LED screen and chairs at the Barker Park Amphitheater. Mr. Call, would you like to present?
Sure. Thank you, council or mayor. So this council is a ramp grant was applied for by the Major Brent Taylor Foundation. In that ramp grant, they had accumulated and put together approximately $260,000 worth of volunteer hours, money, and other donations to help put on their Veterans Day program, which includes the flag drop, the Veterans Day program at the amphitheater, and it also included a few physical upgrades to the amphitheater, which would include a bunch of new chairs. I think 400 new chairs, and a large LED screen. That's the same screen that was used during the Once Upon This Island production. It was rented by the city to help with that production. And in exchange for that, in the conversations that I had with Jenny Taylor about this ramp grant, the city would be contributing $5,000 towards that match for ramp, and also $2,500 of in-kind donations, which is a waiver of the fees for the facility, some employee time to set it up, take it down, meaning set the facility up and down, clean it. And then also the ramp grant also included the banners on Washington Boulevard, so that there would be some ramp grant funds that could be applied towards that as well. The request to the city was the 5,000 plus the 2,500. The request to ramp was $25,000, and then the remaining $230,000 was coming through either donations, which would include the discount off the LED screen, the time the volunteers with the Major Brent Taylor Foundation put in, and other things like that would occur. This was approved by me in January, before it was submitted, in line with what we've historically done with the city partnering on the charity or the Veterans Day program. And then that subsequently 2 or 3 weeks later, we started having the conversation about the city revisiting partnerships and things. And so I think a couple of things have happened right now, but I think that it'd be good for the city to live up to the commitment that I made. That we're going to continue to partner on the Veterans Day program for this year. And then the $5,000 expense is expected to come out of our the municipality's ramp grant, as well as our miscellaneous grant or miscellaneous programs funds that are in our Parks and Recreation and Events GL. There's sufficient funds in that account to cover it. And in talking with finance and others, there's not going to be issue with that budget overrunning, because this was part of the stuff we do is we take that roughly $30,000 each year and put it towards various things. Everything from the trunk or treat to, I mean, we sometimes we even move it over and spend it on equipment for parks that's small and wouldn't be capitalized. So anyways, that was kind of the plan. And we do anticipate next week talking a lot more about how we're going to sponsor stuff and how we're going to partner with folks. I've got a whole list of all the groups that we partner and sponsor with. And it, as I thought about it, it's a lot of people. And so it'll be good for the city to wrap our hands around it. But staff is recommending that we approve this $5,000 in cash, and then also would be accepting the LED screen into city ownership and the chairs. So essentially the things that the city would get out of this is the LED screen, the chairs, and then the military banners. I've talked with Resolution Audio, who's the group that's installing the screen. There is no specific maintenance that needs to happen with it. The screen is basically plug and play. Once they get it set up, a person just needs to connect into the HDMI output with a laptop or some other digital player, and it will play the stuff it needs to. But if there are repairs that need to happen or things like that, the purchase includes 10 additional panels. So the screen is sold in basically foot by foot panels. And so there's 10 additional panels to replace as the others wear out or get broken. And then further down the road to even cannibalize for parts. And the screen is situated in a way that if we run out and we have 12 bad screens, it can be reconfigured smaller and smaller. I know you got an email today that included a link to a RFP that showed what Union Station did with their LED screen. I believe that's the exact same screen. So the one that was in the picture on that RFP is the same screen that's coming to North Ogden City, both of them. So it was configured for the full size and then the smaller size. And so as panels wear out, the screen can be sized down to work. And so it will have a useful life of, it'll last quite a while, but of course it's a used screen and they're not guaranteeing it's going to last for 10 years or 20 years or anything like that. So that's what I know.
Thank you, John. Let me just clarify. I think there's been some questions. I've had conversation with John about this. John does have the authority to commit up to $25,000 from the city. Department heads do have the option to move line items, I think up to 5,000 as long as it's in the budget. My conversation has been that it would be nice for the council to know these things in advance, and I think John recognizes that. But there's nothing that has been done illegally here. The county is basing the approval of the grant on our willingness to have the partnership. That's what makes the application of the funds legal. So I think that's what John is asking for tonight. But let's entertain any questions you may have of John. Councilmember Watson.
Thanks. I spoke with John this week, asked some questions. I just was wondering if you could share, John, your idea about if someone were to rent out the amphitheater, that wouldn't necessarily automatically mean that they have access to this screen, that could be a higher cost and a separate decision. So groups that are smaller, who are just looking for a cheaper rental without a big, huge screen included, this wouldn't negatively impact them. Is that right? Or do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. So the way that the the schedule set up right now is people can rent that space in different tranches, for lack of a better word. Or levels is maybe an easier word. But so people can technically rent the building with the door down, and it's much cheaper than if you rent it with the door up. And then if you rent it with the door up, you're not required to use our AV system. That would be an additional charge. And that's something that we're going to talk about next week as we talk about the business plan for the amphitheater, is what charges we want to set. We already have some preset for rental and space and the AV equipment, but we don't have one for the LED screen yet. And we also need to just make sure the council's okay with where we're at on microphones and sound equipment.
What other questions from Mr. Call? Anyone have any other questions? Mr. Pulver, are you still with us?
Yeah, I guess my only question would be, so next week we're going to talk about like protocols, because I know that's kind of one of the things that I just wanted to, at least get in my mind what if somebody asks, I mean, like for the Barker Park thing, we actually, have a separate, and I know that's sort of a different thing, but if we're setting up the 501(c)(3) for, the Cherry Days thing, that's another thing that we're going to have interface with. And if there's no procedure or protocols that we have between them, then, then we're trying to recreate things. I'd rather not recreate things if we can have something, I'll say written down, but something definitely that we have, people can reference. How about that? Because I know Ms. Taylor would definitely have liked that if there was something, a protocol that would have helped in this situation or not. I don't know. And I think, Mayor, you were talking about legality, that we don't have any issues with that.
That is correct. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. That was my only other concern.
John has the authority to commit purchase orders up to 25,000, I believe. Any department head has the ability to transfer from line item to line item, I think up to 5,000. I think the issue here is one of communication, not any illegal acts of any type. I just want to make that clear. That's not how we operate here in the city. But it would have been nice to know and have that discussion in advance. So, and we've worked that out. John knows where we're at on that.
And I think it will be good to write everything down and put it, because currently the way we've operated is once people get approval from the council, then staff just takes and runs with it from there. A good example is Kiwanis. We don't bring them back to the council every year and say, hey, can they use the building again for free? But so I think we'll set some parameters that I think will include a periodic review. And it might be a 5-year, like, hey, come back every 5 years at least and get permission from the council. Or maybe we'll just list it annually and say, council, here's the list of the approved partners. Do we need to amend it? And we'll go from there.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, here, these things are being given to the city, so the city will have control on its use.
Correct.
This is a gift that's coming to the city.
Yes.
No strings attached.
Yes.
Okay. Just want people to know that, clarify it. Because I think the key to this, if the council decides to move forward, is, we get criticized for expenditures on certain things. I want the public to know, if the council approves this, we're not paying $150,000 for a screen. That's not coming out of our budget. I want to make that clear, because that's one thing that people will jump to the conclusion on, is that, that's the city spent that money and they're not. John, I think, has researched this. I think some of the questions that came up is, what does free mean? Is anything really free? Because there will be liability and there'll be maintenance and the council needs to understand that. So with that, if there's any more questions for John, then we'll proceed. I'll be looking for a motion. If there's no other questions here or comments, Councilmember Barker.
I just said, sorry, let me get closer here. So I spoke with Dave earlier this week, and he said, and my main question was on the screen, can it be stored in an unheated building during the winter time? And he explained to me that it all comes down in those 1-foot panels, and then we can store it inside where it's warm. So that's my main question. Second, you said 400 chairs are coming. How many chairs do we already have up there?
think about 400? Oh,
300 new chairs, and we have several chairs, but they, the majority of them are coal and metal and mismatched. And it was worth it to our group and other groups because of this, we want chairs that look nice.
Right.
To match the building. So there's probably 250 or so right now that are black on racks, and we're looking to purchase 300 more.
Okay.
So give us
If they don't wanna
500.
be in on the LED screen, they could put their 5,000 for
So-
the other 240,000
Okay.
things in.
So I just have to call it order. I'm sorry. There else we could get out of. Joel,
Well,
but I
and-
think there's 550 chairs available probably to seat over there. Okay, what else? Other
And the
questions?
only reason I
Councilman
was bringing
Barker?
up that is we have an ordinance that says we can only sell 500 tickets
Mhm.
or 500 something tickets. So why do we need a lot more chairs? But if we're only having 500 total, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've had a conversation with John too, is we have events over there. I'm not saying this event, but we have events over there that we're not following our own rules on with safety, police presence, gathering permits, et cetera. So those are issues that have to be addressed in our discussion next week too. What other questions, council, do you have? I see none, so I'd be looking for a motion then on the partnership on a ramp grant application for an LED screen and chairs at the Barker Park Amphitheater. Do we have such a motion?
Mayor, I move that we accept the ramp grant application, creating a partnership for an LED screen and chairs at Barker Park Amphitheater.
And could you include authorizing me to write a letter to the ramp committee?
And
Approving that.
authorizing Mayor Neil Berube to write a letter to the ramp grant committee?
Yeah, that's what they're asking for.
Okay.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion and we have a second by Councilmember Watson. Any further questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
Here.
Councilmember Dowpass.
I didn't want to gloss over the fact that we had maybe one or two citizens email us with concerns on this. So we have several questions that came in of concerns from them. And I think that we'll just have to work with them and address each of their questions to make sure that they're comfortable.
Okay.
Can I just add to that? I think it would be good, John, if we can just take from one of the citizens, maybe they had 13 questions that they were kind of interested in understanding, maybe use that as a foundation for the work session next week.
Was that the one sent today?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Because I did get that forwarded to me, so
Okay.
we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 12. This is a discussion on budget highlights, revenues, priorities, and future plans. This will come from our finance director, Jamie Jones. I was speaking with her earlier. My financial report will be what Jamie said.
Hi. So just a discussion tonight. Can you hear me? No? How about now?
More.
More.
Closer.
All right. Do you have the slideshow?
In theory, yes.
Just real quick, I just wanted to go over the budget schedule. Tonight, we'll just talk about the budget highlights, revenues and things. April 9th will be the enterprise funds and the admin presentations. April 23rd will be park and police presentations. May 7th, any other final priorities that we have, talk about fund balances, those things. And adopt the tentative budget on May 14th, and then approve the final budget June 11th. So I just want to make sure to review that. Oh, John. There we go. So did everybody bring your crystal ball tonight?
Hey, Jamie, just on that, June 11th, that could be subject to a truth and taxation that would
Yes,
take
it
us
could.
through. Not that we're going to, but just want to make sure the council understands that there's that option that can be approved, knowing that there's a,
Yeah, the goal is June 11th. It has to be done by the 22nd to decide if we're going to go through truth and taxation. If we do go through that, we have to have it done by September 1st. See here. So we want to talk about revenues first, and we are talking about just the general fund here. Disregard that 11 million on the top there. I didn't change that number, so apologize for that error. So last year, our property tax revenues were at 2.5 million. And last year, when we were looking at what our growth would be, we were projecting somewhere around 40,000, and it ended up being 98,000. So I figured, you know, maybe 50,000 would be a good round number. We won't know that number until late May, to where we've already adopted the tentative in May, to where we need to adopt the approval. So we'll know that number way late in the game, and that's unfortunate, but that's how it goes. Last year we did budget 4.55 million for sales tax. I believe everybody got the report last week of sales tax through January. Right now, and it's on my next slide, but that's okay. Right now we're at 200,000, about 196,000, so 200,000 ahead of projected budget, but we do have 5 more months to go. So it depends on how comfortable council is on that 4.5 number. If we want to lower, if we want to raise it. And again, that'll be something that could be massaged as we move along in the budget process. Licenses and permits. Last year, this number was at 445, but building permits are not as strong this year. And so we dropped that from 400,000 to 300,000. And then services, again, that is tied to zoning and subdivisions fees and other plan check fees, and just dropping that 26,000. Let me go to the next slide. This is a summary, just where we're at on the sales tax. This is our fun little chart that we have. Again, this is through January. The red line is our current fiscal year for 2024. The purple line, if you could see it, or blue, that is last year's line. And then the green is our projected budget. We're currently 7.5% higher than projected, or 3.5% higher than we were at this time last year. And then when we do annualize, we're looking at 4.6, 4.7. So we would look at it all. We look at this, our current fiscal year 2023-24 budget. We started the year out at 10.9 million. And so when we put all these numbers together for 2025, the total down at the bottom is 10,000,007 in revenues. So the difference, the main difference, other than what I just discussed, is the transfers in total. And what that is the use of fund balance that we used, that we budgeted for 24, was the 280,000 in BNC road money. And in 25, the remaining balance in BNC road money that is available is only $88,000. And so that's that $190,000 difference. So in total, we're looking at a $204,000 difference in revenue from last year to next year, from this year to next year. Before we move on, do we want any further discussion on that one?
Well, I think you made the point that these will come more into focus as we move down the line. But, you know, we have become so reliant on sales tax that is so variable that it is a little bit alarming. And I'll give some statistics here in my report about our reliance on that. But initial take on this, I think Jamie was thinking there'd be some gasps because in addition to decreased revenue, you're going to see increased expenses here, primarily in the form of compensation and benefits. And as you know, we have to submit a balanced budget. So I think that's why Jimmy was thinking there might be some gasps, but this will come into focus more. Obviously, the key on this will be what happens with sales tax.
Yes.
And then the council will have to decide adjustments with property taxes, if any. But it's alarming to see a decrease in revenue. Okay, get Jamie.
Right. For the enterprise funds, this is also not set in stone for the enterprise fund revenues. Based on the yellow sheets that the enterprise funds has provided, and looking at our 5-year plan, for the water fund, just to cover operational expenses, we're looking at a $3 increase. I still have some massaging to do in the motor pool fund, so that number could, go either north or south, but we're looking at a $3 increase just to cover operations. Majority of that, $1.50 of that is operational. The other $1.50 of that is covering depreciation, infrastructure, future projects. The other 70 cents where it says infrastructure, that is coming from our 5-year plan. If we implement a baseline of 3% every year, which is about 70 cents every year between now and 2030, we should be able to cover most of the projects that we have coming up, except for the meter replacements that we've talked about, the meter register replacements. That's right now, we're estimating that to be a $4 million project. And in our 5-year plan, we only have about 900,000 of that covered. I think the city is doing well in the sewer fund and also in the stormwater fund. And so that's why those ones aren't here. There's not a projected increase in those funds. However, there is in the solid waste. Again, it's kind of the same issue we've had for the last couple years. Our tipping fees for our garbage collection is up about 15% year to date just right now than we were last year. So we're producing more tonnage, more waste going to the landfill. We've also had to purchase quite a bit of garbage can replacements, but we've been trying to mitigate that. I don't know if Dave's talked to this group about that. Where we used to buy the cans for about $140 a can, and we've just procured cans for about $70. I think it was $67 a can now. But that will be for our next purchase. So right now in this fund, we are about $50,000 over budget for can replacements. And then we also have our Republic Waste, thank you. Republic Waste contract that will go up about 4% this year, and that's contracted. So
yeah, but
we
our
haven't-
contract expires, right?
Yeah,
So
we
we're in
will
a
go
whole new
out.
negotiation, which who knows where that will end up with costs the way they've risen, because they've risen more than 4%. We just had that cap. So we're probably in for an interesting negotiation on garbage collection fees.
So we're with them for one more year. So around this time next year, we should be up to RFP for that. Okay. Next discussion would be from John about salary and benefits.
This is the fun one, council, and this is where you have to put your thinking caps on. So every year, various groups, human resource folks, city managers, and other folks get together and start talking about what increases they're seeing. There's always all sorts of rumors out there. I think the highest rumor I heard is that there's a city out there getting a 10% increase. But I think for us today, we would like to get a feel from the council on what direction you'd like to go. Currently, the budget is built with a 3% increase, just as kind of a placeholder. But it would be good to know from the council what direction you'd like to head as far as, do you want to do a little catch up on those who are maybe lower than they should be? Do you want to do a guaranteed minimum increase for all employees? Do you want to only give a raise to those folks who are underpaid? Just kind of a philosophical discussion that we really need the council to kind of walk down and explore, so that we kind of have an idea of where we'd want to go. In the general fund, a 3% increase equates to about $150,000 plus benefits. So that's a good
Which would
question.
probably be another 50,000, right, John? So we're
Yeah.
talking 200. But refresh my memory, John. I think the council has a policy in place. Are you asking us to change the policy?
Well, every time the policy in place has been, we're going to pay people what they're worth. Every year in the past, the council has said, we are also going to make sure that everyone gets some movement. And so that hasn't always been the official policy. It has been the official reality, though, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The policy is to pay people market rate in the 50th percentile, right? And we have employees that are above that. We have employees that are below that. I think John's probably referencing the discussion on mid-year increases.
Yep.
But I think the question on the table is a simple one. Does the council want to follow their policy, which is paying market rate in the 50th percentile? Those that are top performers could actually go up into the 60th percentile. That answers most of the questions John has, because it does not, and I'm not saying the council can, but the policy just says we'll pay people in the market. It doesn't say that we'll guarantee. Because, you know, if the employment market fell apart, right, we'd still follow our policy. I don't think we're in the business of cutting anyone's salary, but I think the question is do we believe our policy is correct, and do we want to follow it?
Hey, Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Pulver.
I think being on the budget committee, this is now year number 2. I think that was one of the key things is the policy that they have for salary has been working. The people that it's not become a revolving door. It's been a good thing. So I'd be against changing that.
Okay. Any other comments to give John some direction? John does a lot of work on this, and you know, we do get comparables from other cities, and we review that data to make sure we're in line.
So John, 3% is obviously not across the board. It will depend on individuals, where they are with performance and stuff, right? So one person might get a little less than the 3%, one person might get more, right? It's a little dynamic, or is it across the board?
So we just, for budget, to build the budget, we just program in a number because it helps us figure it out. As we go through the spreadsheet and look at who's high and who's low and who's where they should be, it would be everything from 3% to 0% if we went with the strict, you know, if we followed the policy strictly.
Well, my opinion is at a minimum, we have to keep up with inflation, and inflation is trending about 3% still. So that 3% budgeted item is just keeping everyone's wages basically exactly what they were the previous year. So that's a minimum requirement in my book.
So what happens then if we do the 3% raise and there's someone who's still below market value, we're below the 50th percentile?
So the way our policy is worded and the commitment that we've made is, in the past, what we've done is we have a typical cap, meaning someone can't get more than a 10% increase if the market's moved. But there's always been a minimum. So every time we've done the annual increase, the council has said we're going to at least do this many either dollars or percent for everybody, which is actually, and it kind of goes back to what Councilman Pulver said about the revolving door. I think that there's an expectation, good or bad, in government that you get an increase every year. Although we did have years where the city didn't give any increases to employees from about 2008 to 2011. And that's part of what got us behind. But based on the rough numbers, if we did the policy and the goal was to get everyone to market, we'd probably have about 40 to 60 people. And I know that sounds funny because 20 people in there that would see an increase, and there'd probably be about 20 folks who wouldn't get an increase. And that's across all departments, all positions. But I hate to promise that's going to be the number, because it's a really like 10,000 foot level at this point. And when I need to dial in with each department head, we also look at if they've gotten in trouble, if they've gotten any official write-ups or anything that can affect their percentage goal, or if they're a top performer, or if they've moved job positions, because that sometimes it all comes into play. So it's not an easy process, and it's not a fun process, because there are obviously winners and losers in this discussion.
And then there obviously is a provision in the policy too. If we see certain sector moving quickly, like we've seen with public safety historically, we act upon that because, we do realize it's cheaper to keep someone than to lose them. So there is some flexibility in the policy. Just looking at the big picture, you saw Jamie report that revenues are off 250,000, rounding a little bit. You just heard John talk about this being a $200,000 expenditure. That's with not changing anything else on the priority list that's been talked about. You're talking about, a $450,000 shortfall that we're going to have to wrestle with and determine how we're going to solve that problem. So Councilman Pulver said he feels the policy works with the flexibility that's built into it. And there is, I think, flexibility in there. To your point, people can get more than 3%. Some would get less, but overall you've got a budget that you work with and allocate to the department heads. So is there anyone else that would like to comment on changing the policy? I think, John, you've kind of done a high fly looking at the thing and think that that's probably in the range, the couple $100,000 based upon the data you're seeing currently. That
Yes,
could
Mayor.
change, but right now that's in the ballpark. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Councilmember Watson.
So I am a little confused. John is saying that there's always been a minimum raise. And then I'm also hearing that the 3% is an up to 3% raise depending on case by case. So is there a minimum?
In the policy as conceptually talked about, there's never been a minimum guarantee.
Oh.
As it's been applied in past years, the council has always done a minimum. And so that's what you have to wrestle with, is at a certain point, and I'm just going to pick on, I'm not going to pick on an individual by name, but there is one person who, because of some transitions in their responsibilities, they're significantly higher than what they normally would be. That being said, they're not here all the time, meaning it's not a full-time employee. But some of their expertise that we've utilized in their part-time role, we've been paying for some expertise. But if you were just to look at the numbers straight across, they would be in the significantly overpaid category.
My opinion is that we don't want to cut anyone and turn everyone upset or away. And so I just feel like we need to show our employees that we're proud of their work and we value what they're giving and be willing to pay what's fair. So if the question is, are we taking away the raises that we've been doing, then I would say, let's not take those away.
So are you saying that you'd like a minimum, last year, I think what the council said is that everyone was it 50 cents or was it $1? I think everyone got $1 no matter where. And then those who were low still got more than $1, but everyone.
It sounds like that's always been the case since 2018 or something.
It hasn't always been the case. Sometimes it was just a 3%. And, if you're making $15 an hour, then that's 45 cents.
I just feel like we're sending a signal to our employees if we've been doing this for several years in a row and now all of a sudden we stop. So that's where I'm concerned.
Councilmember Watson, that would take into consideration then for some period of time when the market was really hot, we did mid-year raises. So employees got 2 raises. The council just recently said they didn't want to continue that policy as the market slowed down. So I'd be very cautious about, not that we shouldn't do it, but I would be very cautious about making decisions on what we've done in the past. I agree 100%. We want to take good care of our employees. And that's what this policy does. It says we're going to pay market because for a number of years, employees in this city were paid at the 25th percentile. We've got it up there, but if we're going to base it on historical, then you might be incorporating mid-year raises too, because we did that when the market was hot. Councilmember Barker.
I'm in favor of a minimum. I'm not exactly sure what that is. And I'm going to go back to, we should be going back to percentages and not dollar amounts. We used to do dollar amounts when the market was really hot. It's not so hot anymore. But I do think everybody should get at least a minimum, whether it's 2%, 3%. I like 3% because that's, like Councilman Daup has said, that's about what the inflation rate is this year. But I'm going to leave that to staff to figure out what the minimum is, but I believe everybody should get a raise.
Yeah, and shortly, that's based upon what the council approves for the budget. And we can allocate it. So
Hey,
whatever
Mayor.
the council decide. Yes, Councilmember Pulver.
Is there a way, because I know John was going to brief the budget committee next Wednesday, but if it's short enough, we could do that just to show the council what that policy is, because I think that would alleviate a lot of things. Because if we start making a grant, I mean, just saying across the board, picking a percentage, I think that reduces what we're trying to do with the overall percentage and keeping the market rate, because it's a lot of work keeping the market rate. And if you make a across the board thing, that kind of, I don't want to speak for John, but to me, I know that at least it seems like it would screw up a lot of things. And then all of a sudden people that were in range are now above range. And so they would not be eligible for certain raises. So, I think it sounds great. Let's pick a number and let's go with a percentage every year. But at the same time, you're doing that for everybody. And I'll say you penalize top performers, but you don't help them. And I think that's something that we just need to keep in mind, is that a raise to everybody is spectacular, but at the same time, in a strenuous budget environment that we're in, we need to look at the overall market and make a smart decision on that. That's
I
it.
think we have to be sensitive, excuse me, to what it's going to take to treat our employees fairly. And I think it would be helpful if John came back with some different scenarios of, here's a 3% across, here's a 2% across with raising the ones we need to get to our policy. And then I think the council can make a decision on that, because, the real factor here, the council's going to have to decide is, where's the money coming from? You could do 10% if you like. You just have to figure out where the money's coming from. But I just want to point out, John's done a good job on this. We're sensitive, to taking care of our employees. That is the city, frankly. And, but, we also have budget constraints, but I think the policy allows enough flexibility, and depending on the allocation of funds from the council, we can come back with several things, but I think it's important for the council to know what each scenario may result in a budget effect. So John, can you do that? Run some scenarios. You've heard some council members say, they want the 3% across the board. If we did that, then what would we have to do to catch up with those that are below the market range, and come back and let the council know what different scenarios are at different situations, because ultimately it comes down to, how much the council is going to budget for increases and where it's going to come from. So could you do that?
Do you want it for next week, or do you want it at just a future?
Well, I
council?
think it would be good to explain the policy to the budget committee.
Okay.
But I would like to say John does wonderfully colored, I call them horse blankets. I think he's out to like row ZZZ now on his Excel spreadsheet. So he does put a lot of work into it. So, okay. But I just want to make it clear, we are going to take care of our employees, and we'll figure a way to do that. Anything else, John?
I think that's the biggest thing, other than we did program an estimated 3% increase in medical and other benefits. We will see how that pans out. We did move to a new company this year with PHP, which is the Public Employees Health Plan. And so it should be a little more stable, we hope, but we don't know.
Well, I can tell you, sitting on the other side and seeing what's happening with healthcare expense, we'd be very blessed if it's just 3%. They're talking 7 and 8%, up to low double digits. So, but we'll hope for the best. Okay. Anything else? Jamie, thank you. We'll continue to. Jamie's put in a lot of work right now, and we've had some discussions about revenues, and we'll continue to see that come into focus. Okay. Thanks, Jamie. All right, we'll move on to council department reports now. We'd like to start with Council Member Watson. She's going to give us a brief report on administration and recreation departments.
Thank you. Just pulling them up. All right, so from Katie in HR, she has a few things that she'd like for me to share. Bruce Higley is retiring after 35 years of service. Bruce began working in public works and finished his career as senior building inspector. So congratulations to Bruce. We've hired 2 new lateral police officers, Chase Tisher and Wayne Moss. We're excited for them to join our team. We're in the process of reviewing the chief of police applications, and we'll begin the interview process soon. And we received this compliment from a resident. Mr. Espinoza, I live on 1700 North, and I just wanted you to know what a great job your employees did today. As you know, this morning there was a break in a water main on 1700. They quickly diagnosed the problem, had a hardworking crew on site. In about 3 hours, the problem was fixed. Kudos to all involved. They made me glad I live in North Ogden. And that was from resident James Cole. Then from admin and Bryce, he's just wanting us to know that he's been working on getting some equipment going still for the public safety building. So he's still actively involved in that. Thanks to Bryce there. And then this wasn't listed, but I am I'm a board member of the Senior Citizen Group, and the senior board put on a 20th anniversary dinner this past week, and they sold 135 tickets. They invited probably 5 to 10 others in who didn't have tickets. And then they turned away probably 20 to 25 or 30 people turned away as well. And so they're estimating that there was maybe 160 people there. I was there, and it was a really great, just special program, and great attendance, lots of good feedback there. So that was a success. As you heard from the Youth Council, there was a conference this past weekend, and that was a huge success. These kids are becoming great leaders. Glad to be involved in that. And then there's been official events list created, and it's now on the city's website and calendar. So you can look that up there. But just from Justin, things that are coming up soon is the Kiwanis Easter egg hunt is on Saturday, and that's at 9 a.m. in North Ogden Park. And then there's a lifeguard class complete, and hiring is happening for the Aquatic Center and Recreation. Kindergarten basketball, baseball is coming soon. Swimming lesson registrations coming soon. There's movies in the park that have been scheduled. So the website is being updated to show all of those changes. And I believe that's all I have. Thank you. I have a lot of assignments.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Councilmember Prover, did you have something you'd like to report on Public Works?
Yes, thank you. So the big thing is right now, obviously, is the all of the spring maintenance. The fleet of mowers is they're getting those up to speed and ready, and at the same time doing all sorts of cleaning and vacuuming, obviously from all the mess that the storm or winter has done, winter craziness. And I guess the big thing, a citizen mentioned it, that a whole bunch of letters went out giving a deadline for this coming year on lawns and front yards, et cetera. And I think just wanted to put a reminder out for any applications and things like that that need to be done if you're putting stuff on city streets. That's always a big thing with storm drains, et cetera, just to remind citizens to do that. And then also, as speaking of spring, the spring cleanup is coming. I think it's the first Saturday in May, and then going through the other following Saturday in May. And then quick thing, like Councilman Watson was Councilperson Watson was talking about the senior center thing. That was an awesome thing. I if you want good stories, plunk yourself now down next to a 100-year-old World War II veteran, and that was the best 45 minutes of my life, probably right then. That was pretty awesome listening to what he did as an engineer during that time. But anyways, that was just a little aside. The budget committee, going hard out, looking at yellow sheets. We did all the enterprise funds next time, and they're gonna keep working on this coming next Wednesday. It's really good stuff. I highly advise as many people, citizens and council folk to listen to that. That's a pretty significant amount of detail that those folks are spending time on. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Pulver. I must say I felt really good at the senior center celebration. It's not often I'm one of the younger ones there, so it was awesome. I think Jamie gave us a kind of a good report on where we are in reviewing revenues and expenses. Basically, we're right at the appropriate percentage of the completion of the year. There's nothing significantly out of line other than, building permits that have been kind of enhanced by trenching permits. So we'll continue to watch that closely. You saw the sales tax report. It's really interesting. In the years I've been on the council, I haven't seen it bouncing around like it has been. It's historically been fairly steady, but which gives us some uncertainty on where we're gonna end up, but we'll watch that closely. Just some information. I was talking with John Bond down at the county, and it's really interesting. I think this ties into what we're trying to accomplish down here in the development below Washington Boulevard on 2700. I asked him what percentage of our property tax is obtained from commercial or monopolized entities, which would be like Utah Power, and 6% of our property tax is paid by commercial entities. I had him compare us. I've got all the data I'm going to go through, but conversely, when you look at Harrisville, 15% of their property tax comes from commercial entities. So you can see the burden that's placed so heavily, on our residential residents here with property taxes to fund the city. So I think it's imperative that we get this development moving along. I believe after many, many years, the documents have been signed to sell the property. The developer is actively seeking tenants, and he's got, I think, some good tenants there. And so I know John's moving along quickly with getting the necessary documents to move the retention basin so that we can use that for what would be called the anchor tenants. Just one other interesting thing, John and myself and Dave met with Pine View the other day. Citizens will probably be seeing no trespassing signs go up on what we thought were trails in our city along the canals. They've informed us that land is owned by the reclamation of the federal government, that they're the manager of that, and that anybody on that property is trespassing. So John and myself and Dave had a good discussion. We're going to see if we can make some contacts at the Bureau of Reclamation and see if we can't get some agreement there to use those because those trails run all the way from the canyon all the way over. In fact, they informed us that we've actually paved some of their property with asphalt with no agreement. So lots of work to be done there.
No written agreement.
Yeah.
Back
No,
in
yeah.
early 2000s, it was a handshake deal based on what we both can find.
Yeah.
So.
The moral of the story is leadership changes and people forget. And so there is an inability, we haven't been able to find any agreements. So that's kind of interesting situation we're in. But I think, it's really important that we get this development going and bring some property taxes and sales tax into the city to relieve the burden that's on our residents. So I think with that, that'd be my report. John, do you have anything you'd like to add on capital projects?
Yes. So that we're hoping that agreement with the NCRS will be signed in 2 weeks, meaning their chief boss back in Washington, DC will sign it. The Loman View that'll get the commercial process closer because now we'll start the 6-month design window and then hopefully be turning dirt next spring or earlier if we could. Loman View pickleball courts, they should be pouring concrete tomorrow. It is post-tension concrete. Obviously, they'll keep the site secure because they don't want little handprints in it. But if you don't know what that is, they basically pour the concrete and there's some wires that are run through it. And at the very end, right before it solidifies, they basically jack it and tighten it. And it puts compression on the concrete, which adds a significant amount of strength and should eliminate cracking or minimize it at least. The Loman View playground, those pieces have been ordered. They should be installed in June-ish timeframe, about the same time the pickleball court is completely finished, because pickleball court has to sit for 28 days before they can coat it. But there are going to be fences and locked gates up there. So please, if you'd like to go see it, talk with Eric Casperson. He can help you go take a peek without having to jump any fences. The public safety building is almost done. We are in it today, but Nate and Bryce and Tyrell are still working tirelessly to just finish everything. Probably the biggest thing Nate would say, I think he was here earlier, but he snuck out, is that he is not over here all day, every day this week. He's been able to get some other work done, and it's been really good. But there are little things that just need to be tweaked and finished to get the building across the finish line. The water reservoir is completed as far as the concrete, but we're backfilling. Dave and his team worked with Patriot Construction to get a bunch of fill material from an elementary school being built in Ogden. Has pretty good dirt, and they were just going to haul it out west. They're going to bring it to our site and compact it, and it actually should save us a significant amount of money, meaning $100,000, maybe a little more, on material, which is really good. And then the Waterworks Park, which is the one that's right next to the old Public Works facility across from the stump. That one, all the stuff is ordered and it will likely be live in July. We were hoping for June, but the parts had a little bit longer lead time. And one thing we may ask the council before then is we may talk about demolishing that building that's closest to it, the old Public Works building, not the fire station that Family Promise uses, but the other one is, it's got holes in the roof and it's just reached a point where with the storage that we have here now, we don't need to use it for bikes or anything else. And so we're going to recommend taking it down and getting it out of the way so we don't have a beautiful new park next to an ugly old building. Unless one of you'd like to volunteer to paint a mural on it, we could do that. So, but we need a sign permit to do that. Right, Scott? Yes, okay. Anyways, that's the update on the capital projects.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John before we move on? We'll now move on to public comments. And I would ask that, once again, please limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes. Please state if you're a resident of North Ogden and your name. And we'll proceed with that. John, if you look online to see if there's anyone that wants to comment. We'll now have public comments.
Brenda Ashdown. I live in North Ogden. A few years ago, I said I would no longer comment on the webpage, but I'm going to have to break that promise tonight. I'm second time around mothering, and I've only done it for about a year. So the webpage is difficult to look through. What I'm asking for is through the city webpage, you can get onto the public Facebook page. And what I would like to see added to that is when baseball registration started, which was March 15th. It's already, if you don't get in, then the teams are full and you don't get in. You told us tonight when swimming registration is. If some of those things could be put on that Facebook page, I know that I'm asking just for me because I know a lot of other people do more Facebook than I do. That's the only one I do. Your calendar was a bit messed up this month. It had some April things in it. And, it went from April to March and April and back to March. It seemed to have been a little bit cleaned up today, but that was also a little confusing. So I had no place. Well, no, I take that back. I could go to Parks and Rec area under the web page, but I'm not smart enough to get there. I'm sorry. I'm just not, because it takes about 5 links to get there. So if some of that information could just be a little more easily accessed, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll remember this time. John Arrington, North Ogden. I'm probably pretty sure you already have thought about this, but I completely agree with this 501c3 thing. But before you think that solves all your problems, having been in that environment, you will still have considerable support functions to perform. So you'll still require a lot of city staff and work. So thank you.
Hey, John, I wanted to answer your question too on your previous comment. I think maybe there was a misunderstanding. We knew it came out of the enterprise fund. It's budgeted into the general fund, so it's paid out of there and then reimbursed by the enterprise fund on those type of things. So there may have been just some misunderstanding on that. But I think that was the discussion, is that it's budgeted in the general fund. It's paid out of there, but then the reimbursement comes from the respective enterprise fund if there's a payment. Isn't that correct, John? The conversation we had. So just wanted to clarify that.
Well, okay, but if it's a budgeted issue, then it's got to be budgeted as a revenue and an expenditure.
Right.
So it really isn't a property tax budget issue.
No, it's not. You're right. It's fees. Anyone else?
Julie Anderson, a North Ogden resident. It's been a while. I just had a couple of things that kind of concerned me tonight. A gentleman came who is a business owner here in North Ogden, who is asking for support of his business. And the sad thing is you did not do that, at least in my eyes. I understand your thinking on this, but this is a gentleman that provides funding into our city. And it's been a business that has been very helpful. We've bought tires there. They've been very helpful with helping us in that. And yet we were instantly able, and this is no disrespect to Brent Taylor, but we instantly were able to give money and help to an amphitheater that we very rarely use. And it made me sad. What made me even sadder is the fact, no disrespect again, John, but I have to share this. I want this out there in public, is the fact that you can move that kind of money around and we as a public know nothing about it until after the fact. This is our money. It comes from our property taxes. And as such, we should be respected that anytime any money is transferred, that somehow that information is given out so that we know what is being done with our dollars. I saw that there's a possible raise on our utilities again. You know, you have people on fixed incomes. I wasn't here in time to hear about the development that's coming in over there on, I'm assuming 2700 and 300 East. I'm glad to see that. My biggest concern, and I hope we have people in place, because Pleasant View has done a really good job of building a wall where people are going to go, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go to North Ogden. And we seem to be killing ourselves when it comes to businesses. Let's have some respect for these businesses. If we want them, we have to work with them. And this gentleman at Big O Tire deserved your respect tonight. And I believe we should have given him what he needs. It's Washington Boulevard. That has been designated as our commercial zone. And as such, we don't need 10 feet of grass and 10 feet of sidewalks. We need businesses where people can park and be able to do their stuff. So I would ask that as we move forward, that we really start really respecting these businesses that are coming into us and those that ones that are already here, that we may be able to work together and do the things that we need to. Thank you.
Reed Miller, North Ogden. I also was disappointed that you did not take action on Big O Tire, because see, you're delaying that. You have different plans, hey, maybe a spot thing, but you could have taken action, I think, today and then work things out, because this is really, as that last lady said, a business that's been really, really good here in North Ogden. Thank you.
William R. Dale, North Ogden, Lakeview Heights. Similar commentary on Big O. We moved in here in 96. When Big O came in with 99, we didn't have to go into Ogden and go to Big O. When J&J started up that business, it was a huge improvement in this community. And at that time, it was safety emissions or safety inspections. Then emissions came, they picked up that tab. They've grown along with the city. But that site has been relegated to a very strange zoning consideration. In 99, they got the heck beat out of them for doing exactly what had to happen with a lot that was isolated. There was nothing else out there, if you think about it. So the retention pond is a surface water removal, whether it's registered or not, within the drainage configurations, it's never full. That's 2 spots. What Jason's thinking about in the parkways, that's at least 8 or 9 more spots. If you start looking at that lot under the current zoning viewpoints, they can get 14 spaces. If you've got 18 employees out on the street, and I know the citizenry hate that damn corridor on 1900 with cars on both sides. at the minimum, this council or the council before should have eliminated that, only let them be on the creek side. That would have really helped. You're going to get a life safety issue if you're not careful because it's just so clustered right there. So Jason and his brother pick up this property, pick up this ownership, and they're going to carry the mantle. They're already making more money just by the ownership change in the way they're doing things. One day Jason may have to leave that site, but us promoting him out of there at this point, saying you need to be on 2 acres when they just changed that 3 or 4 years ago, isn't relevant to what he's doing. So as he gets more and more popular and they do better in the receipts, then so be it. The one thing Jason didn't tell you is they're not busy 100% of the year. There's 4.5 months that they're not full receipts. So he carries employees. He's paying his employees without having, the opportunity to see that windfall. There are months that they do the windfall. He saves the money. He pays the employees when they're not making anything. Nobody considers that. So he's a legacy business too. Find me another business that has been here as long as he has in the modern era before the turn of, the decade or the millennium. So I don't see the point. This is a special use issue. You're going to have a lot of automobile traffic. There's a couple things Jason could do too to clean up his parking areas, Connex deliveries, things like that. But allowing him to have that movement will help a ton. So just, it's not, I wish it was cut and dried, but it's not. This site is not cut and dried. And it's been difficult all the way down the road as they produced it. Thank you.
Anyone online?
We do have Susan Kilborn.
Okay, let's hear from Susan Kilborn.
Hi, North Ogdenites. I am here to give you your report card. So first I'm going to start with the pros. Oh my gosh, it is so cool to zoom in and actually hear all of you. And being able to see all of you, it's just awesome. So I hope that you have an opportunity to review this and see the difference for what a citizen or somebody like, well, actually Chris tonight is seeing versus how things were before. So yay, you guys, I'm so happy. Also, I want to commend Scott Hess on all the great answers he had. He just snap, had it all figured out. So thumbs up to him. Now, here's what I missed tonight. But I'm going to be the optimist here and know that you guys are going to come through and give us the answers on this. And that's the ramp grant and the amphitheater. I have no comments on it at this point, but I will say I am disappointed that there were not more answers given tonight when several of us were really looking forward to that. But you said you're going to address those, and thank you, Blake, for asking John to make sure that happens. And love you guys. Happy Easter. Susan Kilborn, over and out.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Okay, I see no further public comments. Do we have any comments from staff? Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. You had mentioned for Jason to look at spot zoning, and I just wanted to get a clarification for staff from the council, whether that was a council-sponsored zoning request that staff should carry that forward, or if it's turned back to the applicant to pay just the traditional regular fees. I just wanted that
Yeah,
clarification.
I would say we go through the normal channels. The applicant ought to request that.
Thank you.
So,
We have Chief Quinney with his hand raised.
okay, Chief Quinney, with your hand raised. Let's hear what you've got to say.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Oh, good. Well, great discussion on salaries, and just wanted to give the council an update on our current hiring process. We've had a couple applicants that have come in and Just today, we had one from AP&P that was a great prospect, but basically couldn't afford to come to North Ogden because of the $5 an hour cut he would have to take. And he sadly walked out and is going to have to reconsider his application. But the 3% is great. We appreciate everything and anything the council can do to get our people paid fairly in the market. But take into consideration what those agencies are going to give in July, because if we do 3% and they do 6%, it just is going to put us that more behind. And this applicant this morning was one of about 3 that we've had in about the last year, from Roy, South Ogden, that said they can't afford to come to North Ogden, even though they would prefer to work for North Ogden. We just can't lose great applicants because we can't compete. So just take that into consideration, and I appreciate all that you guys do and the taxpayers, and our goal is to provide the best public service available. And I know out there that the applicants that are applying for North Ogden want to come work for the best agency, but we just want them to be able to afford it. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Chief. Dave, did you want to address the previous issue?
So I just wanted to let the council know that we did talk to Miss Jackie, and Dylan actually left here after his presentation went up. We took some pictures. And so we'll address it with our stormwater team and figure out how we can fix that problem up there at that storm drain basin. So just wanted to give that update.
Okay, what's our general policy, Dave? I think we've said, hey, we don't want to ask the citizens to do anything we're not willing to. Is that
Absolutely.
Still the policy?
Absolutely. Yep. So
Does that answer your question? Thanks for coming. So you had to wait so long to get your answer. But you're welcome back next week too. Okay. All right. Anybody else on staff?
I just have quick things about this room. So everybody in the room is aware and you can pass it on to your friends. There are 2 emergency exits from this room. They're the crash bars with the flashing red lights. If you breathe on them, they will alarm. And if you don't have a badge, but 15 seconds after they alarm, they'll release and you can go out into the hallways and go out the doors on the south and west side of the building. Council, you will get your badge will let you through those doors eventually, meaning that we're getting them set up so they'll work. Right now, we're just working through a few kinks and it's lower on the priority list. But if there is a fire, those are viable exits. You just have to wait 15 seconds. And then also, council, with that, your card will eventually get you into the secure parking as well, so that you can park in there and not be bothered like the mayor of Orem was a couple of years ago. So he was harassed and physically intimidated,
Hit and spit upon.
yeah. So
And he was the mayor of Orem. Just think, that's Happy Valley. All right. Council, any other comments you may have? Ladies first.
Thanks.
Councilmember Watson.
I was trying to hurry and find this online and I'm not finding it momentarily, but I just wanted to address Brenda's comment. There is a way to get an email notification every time there's a recreation event that's happening. Is that no longer? It used to be. Okay.
She's had a hard time getting the emails that
Okay.
we promised.
All
so.
right. I'll look into that.
Also, we are getting a new website that'll be easier to negotiate. So, Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes, thanks for everyone's comments tonight. All of your comments help us improve and help us get better and better. Regarding the Big O Tire situation, I mean, my perspective is that we didn't stiff arm Big O Tire. It's my intention that they will apply for a new zone and that it will go through the process. And I have every intention that that's something that will make what they need to do possible. It's just that I personally had a problem with painting that ordinance all the way down Washington because I feel like the 20-foot setback has been nice for the city.
Although I believe we don't have this 20-foot setback in commercial, right? It's
Well,
5.
yeah,
So
it's complicated.
everything's complemented in government.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else from Councilmember Severing?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I wanted to report that for Barker Park, we just, I was able to secure a $5,000 contribution from America First Credit Union. And that's going to allow us to do the next topography / engineering for the park.
Yep.
Yep. So we're moving forward there. Dave, I don't want to make you feel bad, Dave, but I actually had I've mentioned this to you before, the signs up on the signs that go into the foothills. I don't think they'd mind I use their name, but the Knutsons actually reached out to me. If we can't afford them, they will buy them. Because apparently there's been, and I haven't noticed it because I don't live too far away from them, but I guess there's been a lot of actual 4x4 trucks going across that road at all times of, so, and I know that may not stop it, but we've got to get bigger signs and they've got to be located where they enter into the foothills. So according to Chief Quinney, if we don't have the signs and they're not visible, then we can't hold them accountable. So if you could really work on that, big signs, not this.
I don't want to discourage you either, Councilmember Severing, but we just had this discussion with Pine View. They say they put up big, nice signs and they don't last very long. People just knock them down.
Well, the
So
signs
maybe
that are-
enforcement.
And I know
is the
they're very,
answer.
very old. It was probably long before David was even working in the city, but that's about what you get when you go through most of the
Yeah, I'm wondering if enforcement wouldn't
down.
be more beneficial. If we
Yes,
start
but
enforcing.
According to Chief Quinney, they can't enforce unless there's a sign that
I
says.
thought there was a sign there. There was-
There's places where they've been dragged out of the ground. There's
Yeah.
places where they're down.
Yeah, at least where the signs are, we ought to start enforcing. Maybe the word would spread.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's the problem is they're so faded, you can't see them anyway.
on there. Well, we'll get with Dave and see what Dave's got to say on that. Thank you.
And depending on the cost, we may need to bring back a budget amendment for that sort of thing. You know, again, we just need to make sure we're conscious of that stuff.
Okay.
Well,
Anything
let
else?
us know because the Knutsons are volunteering to pay for some of them if we need to.
Tell them thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else? All right, then. I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.